issues and walk among the groups of two. It's not ideal, it's just how we feel. It's a shame we're easily amused. The only cure for this forward motion is to make emotion fly away. The air is cold, but the water's not frozen. I see ripples rolling every day. Cast a stone and hit a hardcore view. Catchphrase of the day is that it's true. There's no coffee talk and only one way to please. It's a shame what you do moves me. The only cure for this forward motion is to make emotion fly away. The air is cold, but the water's not frozen. I see ripples rolling every day. Yeah, I'm not looking for a windswept view. Our change has changed. Nothing's new. Right on new song. That blues. The only cure for this forward motion is to make emotion fly away. The air is cold, but the water's not frozen. I see ripples rolling every day. If I know what we'll do wrong, I'd take the smile. The only cure for this forward motion is this smile. The only cure for this forward motion is this smile. The only cure for this forward motion.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to Rebellious 1776. My name is Lynn Hurley, and I am here with you to critique, criticize, and fact check our nation's politicians in real time. We love watching a feisty congressional hearing around here because we want to know just what those sneaky little politicians are saying and where they're putting our tax dollars. And if you know someone else who would like to have that information and who wouldn't, please feel free to share the love and share the show with them. And then just sit back, grab yourself a snack and a drink. And if you're joining us live, please join us in the chat, as we always have a fun time as we watch our nation's finest in action. And if you like talking all things politics, why not go ahead and hit that subscribe button? Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to all, so you always get notified anytime we have a new show coming up. How are you all? So happy to see you. Happy Friday. Yay! It's Friday. I hope you guys have had a wonderful week. I know that I have, and I am looking forward to a weekend. Yay! The weather isn't going to be the greatest here this weekend, but that's okay. That's okay. We're going to have a good time. It's lovely today. So it's going to be great. Happy Friday. Yes, happy Easter as well. Easter is on Sunday. Happy Easter, Snoop. And how is everyone? And it is. Happy Good Friday. Yes. Thank you so much. So nice to see you guys here. So today we are going to be watching a House Appropriations Committee hearing, which I don't think we've watched one of those yet here. And we're going to be watching a hearing, an oversight hearing entitled Quality of Life in the Military. And we are going to get to hear from, I think, pretty much someone from every branch of the military. So let's get that going, and then we'll have, as usual, a discussion afterwards. And it should be a fun one too. All right, let me get this pulled up and let me know again how the sound is, if there's any issues with it. Hopefully not, once I get it going.
Sergeant Major Michael R. Weimer of the U.S. Army is the Sergeant Major of the Army. We welcome you. Chief Master Chief James Horia,
Master Chief is here.
Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy. Sergeant Major Carlos Ruiz, U.S. Marine Corps. Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. Master Chief David Florsey, U.S. Air Force. Master Chief Sergeant Major of the Sergeant of the Air Force, and Master Chief Sergeant John F. Benavides, U.S. Air Force, Chief Master Sergeant, Space Force. Best I can tell, all of y'all are practically new. I think maybe our Navy guy has been here before, and most all the rest of you new. So welcome. Okay, first and foremost, I know you're nervous, but don't be nervous. You're okay. You're among friends. We consider you the people who give us the best and most important information about the individual warriors that you represent. I think you can tell us more about what's happening on the ground, in the dorms or whatever you call them, or in the warfare that is important to the soldier, sailor, airman, marine, whatever. So I want to thank you for being here. Be frank. Don't be afraid to be frank. Tell us what you see, what you think you need, because we're here to fulfill not only the event of the big wars that we may have to fight, make sure that those who are willing to fight and go in harm's way, we give them the best possible things that we can give them as their government. So you're our friends, and we're looking to hear from you. All right, my opening statement is as follows. That wasn't a good one. Okay. That was a preamble. That's right. Okay. Today's hearing is on the quality of life for our enlisted soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and guardians and their families. Our 5 witnesses at the table are the highest enlisted personnel of leadership for their respective branches. I'm pleased that we're having this hearing today to start off first on our 2025 inquiry for our next bill. This group's insight is critical. This hearing is a great opportunity to identify areas where we can be more helpful to our service members and their families. It's also an opportunity to discuss the important connection between facilities, readiness, and quality of life. Investing in infrastructure bolsters the military ability to train and fight, while also ensuring our service members and their families are taken care of at home every day. We owe that to them. Now I would like to recognize Ms. Wasserman Schultz, my good friend, for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you yielding, and I really especially appreciate our excellent partnership. We have been side by side on this subcommittee for years, switching places a couple of times, and it's always an honor and a pleasure to join you to be able to stand up for, particularly for this hearing's purpose, the quality of life of our service members and their families. I want to thank the 5 witnesses here today, Mr. Chairman. I think we have the probably the newest minted collection of enlisted leaders that we've ever had at one time. We appreciate your dedication and you know, to the degree that you can answer questions in detail, that would be incredibly helpful. But recognizing the brevity of most of your tenure, it may be necessary for you to come back to us. But you know, the questions that I know I have are real, and I appreciated the opportunity to talk with nearly all of you in advance of this hearing. So our subcommittee continues to provide the robust funding consistently above budget requests, which is necessary to address many of the issues that we'll discuss here today. But we all know that, and forgive me, I have a cold on top of my normally terrible allergies, so I'm a little stuffy. We all know that funding alone is not enough to address issues like mental health, sexual assault, and inadequate housing. Leadership from all of our witnesses here today, thank you very much, and other senior military leaders is a necessary part of any solution. Your roles are vital to the success of our military by ensuring that we take care of all of the needs of our service members on and off the battlefield, and I know each of you take your responsibilities seriously. Maintaining recruitment and retention is a job that is never completed. I hope to hear from our witnesses today about the importance of providing adequate housing and childcare. These fundamental services are essential to bringing on and keeping service members in the military. And frankly, we've heard testimony from those very service members, some of whom have expressed angst to us that they would have liked to or want to spend their careers in the military, but their quality of life is so poor that the pressure on their families is making that very difficult, if not impossible. If we can't support our service members and their families or provide livable, quality housing, we're going to lose people. And we're already struggling with retention as well as recruitment. For FY24, the committee provided $336 million for child development centers, known as CDCs, which includes funding for 6 new CDCs. Today, I want to dig into the specifics of childcare needs across the services and the status of your infrastructure plans to meet those needs. Additionally, in FY24, we again provided an additional $30 million to improve the oversight of DoD's housing portfolio. I'd like to hear from our witnesses how that funding will be utilized. And I'm dismayed to once again have to highlight the issue of sexual assault in the military. That certainly affects a service member's quality of life. While I appreciate the steps that DoD and the services are taking to tackle this issue, like developing training programs to educate and instill a culture of respect for those with whom they work, the statistics that we've seen continue to show dramatic progress is still needed in both reducing the prevalence of assaults and in bolstering trust in the reporting system. The Department of Defense's FY22 annual sexual assault and prevention report showed another increase in reported assaults. I hope the FY 2023 report that should come out imminently shows more progress, but I tend to doubt that it will. A large part of supporting service members holistically includes supporting them mentally and physically. We need to ensure that we prioritize each and every person's mental health and continue to evaluate and study the effects of what service members are doing in combat or in training environments. And to that end, healthcare is integral in supporting the quality of life of a service member and their families. I commend the department for finally expanding its previously discriminatory IVF policy by now allowing eligible troops to access IVF regardless of their marital status or sexual orientation, and allowing for the use of donated eggs and sperm. As someone who became a mother as a result of IVF, this is deeply personal and very serious for so many families. I fought for years through language in this bill to change this policy, thanks and side by side with the support of the chairman, that affects the care that veterans can receive as well. More can be done, and we know that we'll continue to work together to make sure that we are pro-family. We must continue to make investments to ensure that the environment service members and their families live in are safe and healthy. From addressing lead paint to asbestos and mold, oversight of housing is not just an abstract goal. Oversight has a very real effect on military families. We must also continue to address contamination that is left behind after a military base is no longer active. I continue to hear concerns from the public that the speed of DoD's remediation efforts for PFAS contamination is far too slow. For FY24, this committee once again provided an increase above the request of $50 million in dedicated funding to address PFAS contamination. We've been prioritizing this as a committee, whether the judge is chair or I am, for several years now, and the expectation is that DoD will expedite cleanup of these contaminants. Looking to the year ahead, we will soon dive into the specific budget requests for the services, and I hope after those robust discussions on MILCON funding needs, we will see a bipartisan House bill with adequate funding to fully address the requirements to ensure military readiness and improve the lives of our service members and their families. Thank you all for coming today and for your service, and I look forward to your testimonies. I yield back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Watson. All right, we ask you to keep your remarks to about 5 minutes. Review what you have to say, and then we'll have questions.
Microphone, please, sir.
Chairman Carter. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Carter, Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz, distinguished members of this subcommittee, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you today about the quality of life in the Army. Over the last 7 months, I've been able to go out and see our formation across the country and overseas. What I see makes me extremely proud. The soldiers, families, and Army civilians who make up the all-volunteer force are committed to the mission. Our Army is formidable and lethal, capable of deterring, fighting, and winning against capable adversaries, in large part because of the incredible men and women we have on our team. We have active reserve National Guard soldiers training, campaigning, and responding, including over 65,000 soldiers who are deployed around the globe, and another 74,000 standing by with immediate and crisis response forces. Behind every one of those men and women is a family bearing immeasurable weight. We're committed to supporting those soldiers and their families, building cohesive teams across the Army, and ensuring that we are fostering a safe and professional climate. This starts with building positive quality of life on multiple fronts. First and foremost, housing. Soldiers and their families deserve safe living conditions. We're committed to improving these conditions and appreciate Congress's support, especially the $3.4 billion investment in military housing in FY23. Currently, we're putting an emphasis on unaccompanied personnel housing and barracks. Second, we are committed to improving spouse employment options. We have over 431,000 spouses on the Army team, many of whom work. It's important to us that those spouses have employment options that facilitate their family readiness and quality of life. Military Spouse Employment Partnership and My Career Advancement Accounts are two initiatives that provide those options. Third, we must provide quality childcare options. CDC construction and renovations are underway across Army installations, and we are also offering fee assistance to address unmet childcare demands and streamlining hiring to help maximize capacity. Fourth, holistic health and fitness, known as H2F. We are investing in our soldiers' well-being to enhance combat readiness and develop resilient and lethal warfighters. The positive impacts of embedding H2F performance teams in brigades are evident. And finally, our families must be able to easily navigate the Exceptional Family Member Program. By the end of FY24, Headquarters Department of the Army Central Office is to be established to ensure the consistent processes across the Army. These efforts are all interrelated and nested with a broader effort to build a strong and successful team culture. We lean on various approaches and organizations for both bottoms-up and top-down feedback, taking a connecting to protect approach towards improving our climate and reducing harmful behaviors. These include the Director of Prevention, Resilience, and Readiness, the Integrated Prevention Advisory Group, our monthly Leading Change forums, and our Building Cohesive Teams forums. These efforts also require us maintaining a close coordination and partnership with Congress, as well as reliable and predictable funding. And I will add, recruiting and retaining talented soldiers is a critical component to building positive command climates. Our Army has made some improvements over the last year, and we will continue to focus on the priority effort going forward. In closing, the most rewarding aspect of my position is ensuring our soldiers remain the most lethal warfighters the world has ever seen. That includes taking care of their families. Together, we can ensure the Army remains the nation's premier warfighting force it's ever seen, built around a culture of cohesive teams, capable and ready to face the challenges of today and tomorrow. I'd like to thank the chairman, the ranking member, and the members of this committee for their leadership, their continued support of our soldiers, Army civilians, and families, which are our most valued asset, and taking care of them now and helping us well into the future. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Master Chief, you may proceed.
Chairman Carter, Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, it is my privilege to speak with you once more on behalf of our sailors and their families. Your Navy is busy generating credible combat power as a decision option for our nation's leaders, and when called upon, to deliver exceptional results. This hard work is being done on the backs of our sailors and their families. To maintain a lethal fighting force, we must invest in their quality of life and mission-critical infrastructure. I'm excited to be here with you today, having this important and hopefully rich discussion. The Gates Commission was established to study the viability of creating the all-volunteer force that we have today. The commission highlighted 5 pillars that would be necessary to sustain that all-volunteer force: adequate pay and compensation, quality housing, timely access to medical care, a retirement plan, and ensuring that the military remains a reflection of the American people that we serve. The good work of Congress and the Department of Defense over the last year has done a lot towards strengthening these pillars, but there is certainly more work to be done. I also believe that we should consider adding a 6th pillar to the Gates Commission, one of family readiness. A much greater preponderance of our force today are families compared to the all-volunteer force we created 50 years ago. We understand that for us to retain our sailors, we need to retain their families as well. Family dynamics such as spousal employment and childcare are key contributing factors to their retention. To fully enjoy the financial stability in today's economy, most families in America require dual income. Many of our military spouses are challenged in securing that stable and adequate pay and employment. Without ample opportunities for our spouses to secure employment and contribute to the financial stability of their families, many of our service members feel compelled to leave the Navy to better provide for their family. The work of Congress and the DoD in this area of concern have been tremendously supportive and helpful. Federal hiring authorities, licensure portability, fee reimbursements, among other initiatives such as remote work options, have proven beneficial to military spouses, helping during duty station transfers. I encourage us all to continue working and consider stronger federal hiring opportunities for our spouses, along with spouse co-location in securing continued meaningful employment for those spouses whenever our service members need to relocate to a new duty station. Additionally, the ability to secure and afford adequate child care is one of the top stressors of our sailors and their families and serves as an inhibitor to that spouse employment. The approved military construction projects to build child development centers in fiscal year 2024 are needed, and I am appreciative for your support and the appropriations necessary to begin these projects. And while we wait for these CDCs to be built and then staffed, it is critical that we continue to look at all available options to tackle these shortfalls. Many of our CDCs are already in competition for staff, with child care facilities operating in the local communities are unable to reach full capacity due to those staff shortages. However, we are finding great success with fee assistant pilots, and an expansion of these pilots will make it an immediate impact for our sailors and their families needing to secure childcare. We have highly skilled young men and women standing watch right now in our combat information centers on our ships that are patrolling the Bab el-Mandeb, who are definitely identifying threats and determining which weapons to engage to neutralize those threats in highly trafficked waterways in just a matter of seconds. Under these extremely stressful conditions, our sailors are delivering prompt and precise action that with one wrong decision could lead to catastrophic loss of life. The stakes are high and the responsibilities and expectations we have of these sailors is just as high. In order to recruit and retain a highly qualified and professional force such as this, we must re-examine how we value the jobs of our service members and adequately compensate them commensurate with the scope of responsibilities and the expectations that we have of them. Our sailors and our families face many challenges and experience many of the same barriers to service that have been constant since the creation of the all-volunteer force. When the quality of life needs and the barriers to service of both our sailors and our families are adequately addressed, our warfighters are better focused and are more positively connected to our Navy. As we continue to face difficult decisions, we must continue to ensure our warfighters are appropriately equipped, trained, and postured to fight and win. We must also ensure that their well-being is in mind, providing a quality of life commensurate with the scope of responsibilities that are placed on our sailors and our families every day. I am proud and honored to represent the talented sailors serving in our Navy today, and with the support of our Navy family, I am confident that we will remain the most dominant maritime force the world has ever seen. The work that you do enables us to remain ready for any situation. I thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Chief. Sergeant Major.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Chairman Carter, Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz, and distinguished members of this committee. I appreciate your attention and support for the quality of life for those who defend this great nation. By our Title X mandate, the Marine Corps is uniquely composed to perform other such duties as the President may direct. It's a commitment we uphold across the globe because we are persistently forward and ready today. For instance, last week, at the request of the State Department, U.S. Southern Command deployed a Marine Corps Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team to the U.S. Embassy in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. In the wake of civil instability and unrest, the embassy remains open and secure today. Also, last week, the 26th Marine Expeditionary Unit completed an extended deployment aboard amphibious warships in the European Command and Central Command areas of responsibility. That Special Operations Capable MU conducted real-world operations in the Arabian Gulf and the Straits of Hormuz in response to attempts by Iran to threaten the free flow of commerce. And again, last week, Marines trained alongside our NATO partners in Norway's Arctic, while other Marines provided humanitarian assistance to the Republic of the Philippines during time of crises. So at any given day, any time of the year, your Marines are forward edge of every climb in place, demonstrating that we're capable, that we're ready, and that we are trusted. I recently spent time with some of these Marines overseas. They were living and working in challenging conditions with limited amenities, overcoming mental and physical fatigue associated with austere environments. Yet the Marines were motivated, confident in themselves and their teams, and getting the job done. That's how we trained them. The Marine Corps also recently achieved an unmodified audit opinion, the best possible outcome and the first for a military service. So rest assured that the resources you provide will be well managed. We owe it to the Marines to provide the services and goods that fuel the Marines to persevere. Our Barracks 2030 mission takes an aggressive approach in tailoring the barracks portfolio to the needs of the future force while improving the Marines' quality of life through specific investments. Our Marine Corps Total Fitness mission addresses the matters of mind and body, optimizing the performance of each Marine and the readiness of our organization. These programs are designed to not only improve combat readiness, but also reduce the behaviors that degrade our service. So today, inside this committee hall, we share a common understanding that we are to remain focused as the premier warfighting organization we are known to be. That statement, the Marines have landed, will always carry an enormous weight to friend and foe. We are resolute in our investments to the quality of life for our Marines and our families, and we will get this job done too. I look forward to taking your questions.
Thank you. Chairman Carter, Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz, and distinguished members of this subcommittee. I'm grateful for the opportunity to address the critical issues affecting the lives of our airmen and their families. As we navigate through a time of profound significance, it's imperative we acknowledge the evolving challenges facing our military. Throughout modern history, airmen have been at the forefront of pivotal moments, shaping the course of our nation's defense. Today, we confront strategic competitors such as China and Russia amidst a rapidly changing landscape of warfare. The emergence of multi-domain threats, including cyber attack, hypersonics, autonomous weapon systems, underscore the urgency of maintaining our military superiority. The age of uncontested Air Force dominance is behind us. To stay ahead, we must harness the innovative spirit within our ranks, addressing key challenges head-on. This moment demands decisive action to equip our airmen for success in an era defined by great power competition. Quality of life for our service members and their families is paramount. We must ensure access to quality childcare and healthcare. Recent increases in military pay are appreciated, yet we must remain vigilant in addressing inflationary pressures and rising housing costs. Ensuring adequate housing for our airmen and their families is non-negotiable. We're committed to addressing the challenges, investing in the maintenance and construction of housing facilities. In healthcare, we acknowledge challenges in accessing services, particularly mental health care. We're committed to improving access and support for our airmen and their families, leveraging partnerships and data-driven initiatives. In addition to these programs, suicide prevention remains a top priority, with a focus on building connections, detecting risk, and promoting protective environments. We're dedicated to supporting the mental well-being of our personnel and encouraging them to seek help when they need it. Caring for our airmen must also extend to our family members. Childcare is a critical workforce enabler, yet demands often outpace availability. We are working to continue expanding childcare options and support programs to better serve our airmen. Recognizing the diverse needs of modern military families, we're committed to improving spouse employment opportunities and license portability. Supporting our families is foundational to maintaining readiness and mission success. I want to thank this subcommittee for its unwavering support. Our service members, backed by resilient families, are ready to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow. Let us ensure they have the resources and support they need to continue safeguarding our nation's security for generations to come. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Chairman Carter, Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz, and distinguished members of this subcommittee. Thank you for your continued support and your dedication to the quality of life of our guardians and their loved ones. I'm honored for this opportunity to talk about my number one priority, our nation's guardians. The Space Force was established in recognition of the rapidly changing face of warfare. As rival competitors seek to threaten our space domain and United States way of life, our Space Force is focused on optimizing for great power competition, with initiatives organized to develop people, generate readiness, project power, and develop capabilities that will support the joint force. However, our service must also ensure we continue to attract, recruit, and retain our guardians for this competition and, if required, conflict. This means the accessibility of childcare, economic security, dormitories, family housing, mental health, and competitive pay and compensation are not solely quality of life issues. For guardians with 24/7 employed in place operations, primarily from permanent U.S. installations, these are not just benefits, but they are readiness issues. Our model of presenting forces to combatant commanders creates a non-traditional warfighter experience. For example, before guardians take their positions on operations floor, many are often dropping off children at child care providers and trusting that the facilities are available, well-maintained, and secure. However, child care access challenges are compounded by the complexity of shift work, where our guardians can struggle to find child care outside of normal business hours and on weekends. Budget stability and timely appropriations are critical to military quality of life initiatives and, in turn, military readiness. I want to thank you for your tireless efforts for the fiscal year 24 Military Construction Appropriations Act ensuring the department has housing and childcare resources for our guardians. Building on this momentum, the fiscal year 25 budget seeks to continue these investments, safeguarding our promises to service members and their families. The demand for guardian talent, technical expertise, and capability will only continue to grow, and this comes with added operational stress and pressure. We must insulate guardians against internal and external factors that prevent them from being combat ready and fully capable to accomplish their mission. We must make their experience meaningful and fulfilling amidst lucrative options from other sectors that seek guardians for their character, their skill, and their talent. Guardians entering the service today are educated, digitally literate, and hungry for opportunities to solve hard problems and assume greater responsibilities in the intelligence, cyber, and space domains. We all know that job satisfaction is important for retaining talent. During a recent forum with Guardians, they raised concerns with incomplete threat and system models and simulators to prepare them for the high-end threat our near-peer adversaries pose. These concerns demonstrate our Guardians' passion for the mission, and we owe it to them to continue our investment in our operational test and training infrastructure and ensure they have the tools and the environments necessary for readiness. These investments are the value proposition we seek to offer. It protects and ensures their focus, resolve, and willingness to continue their journey in the Space Force, and greatly depends on our commitment and actions to care for them and their loved ones. The decisions we make today will impact future generations of Guardians. Our investment in them is the greatest leverage to secure our nation's interests in, from, and to space. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
We thank you and thank all of you, and good job. I'll start off and we'll go as we always do and try to stay within our 5-minute.
Oh, good Lord, sir, could you please turn your microphone on or get closer to it?
Barracks, the GAO report of from September of last year painted a bleak picture of the state of barracks at DOD. They observed barracks in poor condition, including some with safety risks like sewage overflow and inoperable fire systems, and barracks that don't meet DOD requirements for privacy and amenities. How are each of your services responding to the funding of this report? What can we expect from your services in terms of requests for funding to fix these problems over our latest future year defense program? And as cost of barracks rise, what role do you see that
There we go.
possibly 3D printing might play in helping control costs and provide high quality accommodations for service members to exceed? We'll start with the Army.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that question, and I acknowledge the GAO report in which you're referencing. And so the Army's prioritized $2.1 billion investment a year across the FIDEP coming up, and the Secretary's passionate, and we're going to invest 100% sustainment in those, focusing on restoration and modernization. We were already leaning into our approaches before the recent NDAA language came out on barracks managers, and so that we get back from the model we currently have, which is uniformed service members with collateral duties, and professional barracks managers to truly take care of that infrastructure as we invest dollars into sustaining it. In reference to our Department of Public Works, to be able to also sustain the money we're putting in those barracks, we're roughly 900 plus short employees, and we have a strategy through Army Material Command to we call it build back DPW, to hire those critical people so that we can maintenance the work orders in our barracks. And then lastly, Judge, to respect the time, the 3D printing, which I observed myself, the models down at Fort Bliss, it could have an application in certain locations, but it's still pretty restricted as far as a large opportunity for us. They're open bays right now. They don't stack. And so for mobilization sites, it could be applicable, but it seems it needs a little further before it's be able to use larger. And then, of course, we are taking a look at privatized options with a pilot at Fort Irwin.
Thank you.
Chairman Carter, in the United States Navy, we're already beginning from a deficit alongside our sister services in providing adequate unaccompanied housing and barracks to our most junior service members. We still consider shipboard living to be adequate government quarters, which is just not where we should be thinking in today. So we're moving out and trying to find more and more bed spaces to move our sailors off our ships and into our barracks. That's largely where you're going to find us to be not compliant with the standard that we should be providing, is that we're doubling up people in single occupancy rooms. But make no doubt, we do believe that every sailor deserves to have a separation from their work life and into their home life. So they have a place to decompress, both physically and mentally, so they could be more refreshed. One of the areas that I think we're going to find greater resolution and more impactful, immediate impact to supporting our sailors will be with an expansion of our PPV pilots that we've had going on both in San Diego and in the Hampton Roads area. Pacific Beacon that's operating our PPV barracks in San Diego that is the model. That is what we should be striving toward. We're looking for expansions in those pilots, and any support that I can get from yourself and the other members of Congress in meeting that end, I think will be a lot more successful.
Sergeant Major?
Sir, acknowledge the GA report, but typical Marine Corps. We found that the GA report did samples, right? So as of 3 days ago, we finished the entire inspection of all of our barracks all over the globe. So now we know we're in a better spot to understand where the rest of the issues are. So it's not defendable and not going to, but we do have, and the Commandant has, in fact, invested heavily on the future of barracks. And that's, I mentioned in my opening statement, Barracks 2030 plan, and there's some immediate wins there that we're doing. Sorry. It's the places where it's just so hot and there's no air conditioning. The Commandant has decided, hey, maybe we need some air conditioning in this barracks. It's not, for us, it's not that hard, right? It's a place that you can climate control your room. It's fresh furniture, is washers and dryers that work. But I think the other part is right sizing our inventory. So knocking down those barracks that are not ever going to be in standard, right? And it's probably a place where this committee can help in that when we build something new and we need to tear something down, and you mentioned, sir, the rising cost of building something, well then the cost of tearing down something it's also quite up there, right? So there's significant investments in 25. We've already in the last couple of years refurbished 30 barracks. So getting them up to date, having those basic things that we need. We are also going to hire civilians, getting the Marines who are doing 3 jobs, and one of them is barracks manager, get them back to their formations. So get the civilians to worry about the maintenance of the barracks 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Then we have dedicated maintenance teams. So when your room is locked, when your window doesn't open, when something's broken, that someone's not going to come 45 days from the moment that you put in the request, that they come that day or the day after. So it's not hard, like as I mentioned, but I think the final touch on it is the Commandant said, okay, we will put the way we handle barracks into the IG Marine Corps inspection checklist. So now we will know all over the Marine Corps who's not meeting the mark, and commanders, leadership will be held accountable.
Very good. What's the Air Force doing?
Thank you, Chairman Carter. The DAF is planning its largest FSRM, facility sustainment, restoration, and modernization budget to permanent party dorms in more than a decade. We're investing $1.1 billion in these modernization and restoration efforts to address more than 100,000 bed spaces across the Department of the Air Force for both airmen and our guardians. We have assigned full-time trained military personnel as airmen dorm leaders at every military dorm across the department. we've also written into our regulations a requirement for supervisors, leaders, commanders, and first sergeants to routinely visit the dorms and ensure that our airmen have the living conditions they need to be successful. We've invested in the last 3 fiscal years over $557 million to complete 98 projects to ensure our standard of living for our dorms is adequate. And as of today, 99.3% of our dorms are assessed as adequate or above. We've increased our capability to service these dorms. And when we have that small percentage of facilities that is not adequate, we're investing in MilCon. So in FY25, we've got MilCon in the FY25 PB for our largest deficit locations, including Langley Eustis, Barksdale, Cannon, Goodfellow, and Ellsworth across the FIDEP. We have a dorm master plan at the department level that considers the condition of each facility and prioritizes our scarce resources to ensure our airmen have the living conditions they need. Additionally, we're paying attention to what the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy mentioned with his privatization study out in San Diego. And we plan to leverage those lessons learned, and we're considering options as well in the department. We think they'll work best in CONUS remote and isolated locations, and we're pursuing a privatization project for unaccompanied housing out at Edwards right now, sir.
Thank you. Space Force.
Thank you, Chairman. So the Space Force and Air Force work very closely on the dormitories and infrastructure under the department. But across Space Force installations, we have 28 military dormitories that we have. The average building condition index is 82, which is considered acceptable under the DoD standard. But we are doing investments. Each fiscal year, we look to do an investment to upgrade and do repairs on the dormitories. Right now at Fort MacArthur out at LA Air Force Station, there's a renovation going on, a dormitory there. And at Buckley Space Force Base, they're going to do the plan and design starting in 26. That's what's planned out. And what's really important is that for Buckley, for example, it's not just Guardians and airmen living in those dorms. There's soldiers, sailors, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen in some cases as well. So I've had the opportunity through my travels in the last couple of months to try and visit with my wife, Kathy, every dormitory, every installation that we go to that belongs to the Space Force, to personally see the conditions and hear from the men and women who are living in those facilities. And as Chief Flossie pointed out, the full-time airman dorm leaders is what we call there. The leadership team that is invested and connected with the men and women living in those dormitories, partnering with the chaplain service and other leaders on the cross installation is very, very inspiring. I was over there during some of the holidays, and just the community they're trying to build there and the care to make sure that it is a home for those men and women living in the dormitories, not just four walls and a bed.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad the Marines have found air conditioning.
Thank you,
Ms. Wasserman-Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This committee is led by a Texan and a Floridian, and
We understand air
I
conditioning.
think we would say we're definitely pro air conditioning. So I can appreciate the effort to address the quality of life of living conditions of enlisted men and women who live in barracks. And certainly the condition of those barracks is important. But if you fear being sexually assaulted, no matter how good the conditions are in those barracks, then your quality of life, needless to say, is poor. According to DoD's FY22
Hey,
annual
Schultz,
report on
always gotta
sexual
be the
assaults in
Debbie
military
fucking
issued in
downer.
April last year, there were more than 8,942 reports of sexual assaults involving service members during the 2022 fiscal year.
Not
which
to
is a
say that's
slight
not an
increase over
important
the
topic, but
8,866
wow, way to bring the
assaults
room
there were
down.
in 21. That was itself an increase over 2020. And we're expected to see the FY23 report released soon. As I mentioned in my remarks, I hope to see a significant improvement, but I'm doubtful. So the initiatives from the Independent Review Commission to ensure justice are important, but it's essential that we get ahead of this problem and have effective prevention efforts as well. And I appreciated the opportunity to talk with most of you ahead of this hearing, but I want to hear from each of you how you're analyzing the degree to which increases are due to increased reporting or increases in sexual assaults in your branch of service. And so that's an important distinction, and it's one where I hope there is enough curiosity for you to know the answer to those questions and are trying to
So
analyze
doesn't that seem like that
specifically
should be a
whether or
separate
not
or
there
different
are true
hearing? If we're
increases
talking about the
or more
quality of
comfort
life, I
level
get that that
reporting.
sort of
So
plays
we'll
into
start
it, but
with
that's not
Sergeant Major
exactly
Weimer,
what
please.
they're focusing on in this hearing.
Ranking Member, thank you for that important question. And though our numbers are a little bit down in the Army based off the report that you're referencing, the numbers still aren't great, and sexual assault will continue to be something, and sexual harassment, something we continue to never let our foot off the gas. I think the two of the largest efforts that we're doing to not get complacent is really our Integration Prevention Advisory Group.
Sergeant Major, I'm going to ask you about that. My specific question is, how are you attempting to analyze whether or not, now you had a slight reduction, but still, I want to know how you're attempting to analyze whether or not increases or your numbers are due to more reporting or more sexual assault and sexual harassment.
Yes, Ranking Member. Part of that initiative is hiring 11 additional data scientists that we actually have job offers out now, is to truly look and be able to see ourselves, because we see trends. This one happens to be a downward trend, but why? To your point,
Right.
your actual point. And I'm not sure we can still see ourselves, which is the importance of
In
the.
your case, less reporting.
Yes,
Is there more fear, or, is that the cause? But
And then how do we
someone
learn?
who's going to look.
Yes, ma'am. What's working so that we can proliferate it across the entire force,
Mhm.
not celebrate the fact that we went down potentially 8%. Why? Because we have to expand that from Humphreys in Korea all the way to Poland.
Right.
And so investing in folks, frankly, that's new to me, data scientists, not something that we grew up talking about in our careers, is what we have to do now to truly, because there's so many streams of data coming in for a senior mission command at each one of the installations. We're overwhelmed with it. Now, we've spent a lot of time looking at what could be causing those. A lot of those are the cultural pieces we talked about, but it's folks like the data scientists and taking the collateral duty out in the sharp world, taking that out of the uniformed personnel and hiring those people that this is what they do day in and day out. For the commanders to know we need more of this and less of this, because this didn't work and this did. That is our secretary's number one goal right now with the IPAG.
Thank you. Master Chief.
Ranking Member, to get right to your point of your question, previously there was no mechanism to indicate why there was an increase in reporting. But also to your point in your comments, leadership needs to be part of solving this problem. And I do believe that with the cultural transformation that we've had, with some changes in policies such as no wrong door, and other things, that we have increased people's trust in the organization to make those reports, especially in the areas that Sergeant Major of the Army was describing, where we have professionalized rather than had collateral duty sailors serving in these important positions. That shows the importance that we have as an organization in solving this problem. And I do believe that is an increased trust, and that's increasing our reporting. What we'll learn is in the Office of Secretary of Defense is issued the DoD-wide Workplace and Gender Relations Survey that for 2023. We should have those results shortly. And from there, we'll have a better understanding, hopefully, of why we have that increase.
So is that survey designed to get responses to questions to discern whether there's more comfort level in reporting versus, a greater increase in attacks and assaults and harassment?
Ranking Member, that is my understanding, is exactly the point of that survey.
If you can just follow up with us with more detail about how that question instrument was designed, that would be helpful.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Sergeant Major Ruiz.
Yes, ma'am. And just to follow with Chief Master, so the organizational survey, like that tells us today what areas around the Marine Corps, what commands have a higher tendency of Marines and sailors inside the organization that don't feel trust. in that command team and handling and reporting. So we are starting to see where those issues are and starting to pinpoint and what the data, right? So it's our ability to see where the command teams are failing to hold a climate, a culture that Marines feel trusted, and that not just that they fear something may happen in that command, but also does the command team have the trust of the organization that they're going to do something about it.
Are the Navy and the Marines doing something similar to more granularly zero in on your own data in your service rather than the general across the board DoD survey
Yes, ma'am.
like the Army has?
Yes, ma'am. And I was going to follow up with Sergeant Major of the Army's comments in the hiring of the people and the data, the ability to see ourselves. Absolutely. That's where we're going as well. Every morning I see an email and it has a list of what happened around the globe, sexual assault or ideations or attempts. So we ask, what are we doing with this information, right? How are we activating? How are we actioning this information? And that's what we want to get at quickly. But while we can't control what we can control in the Marine Corps, ma'am, I think it's also part of our culture. We have such a strong imprint in a young person's life when they go through 3 months of boot camp that we decided that it's time to stop talking about response early in training and start talking about what healthy relationships look like, consent. So we want to set up a baseline early. That's what we want to get that early in their training when they're open to imprinting from the Marine Corps, and then continue as we have with additional training as they improve in ranks.
Thank you. Chief Flossie?
Thank you, Ranking Member. We don't have, it's really difficult to suss out the reporting. Is it to your direct question, is it due to increased comfort level, or is it due to an increase in actual assaults? So I'd be happy to take that question back and see if we can find some more detail. I can tell you that we've introduced a SAPR reporting dashboard for commanders that includes risk assessments of their climate, and it provides for trend tracking over time. So we're working similar to the other services on DAF-specific reporting tools that will allow us to illuminate the actual details that you're asking for, ma'am.
That's incredibly important to understand, whether the numbers that you're looking at are the result of more reporting or more assaults. And I mean, how are
Absolutely.
you able to make adjustments if you don't know the answer to those questions?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, ma'am. We're
Might be hard,
focused
but
on
there has
taking
to be a
care of
way.
any victim that comes forward, and so we haven't focused as deliberately on why they reported. We focus on the report and taking care of the victim and
Right.
looking for
Well,
accountability.
that's the point of my question, is that the goal is prevention. I
Absolutely.
mean, if I certainly hope that you provide good care for someone once they've been assaulted or harassed. But
Yes,
you have
ma'am.
to make sure that it never gets to that point in the first place. And understanding the data is a critical tool in order to ensure that.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Chief Benny-Venga?
Thank you, Ranking Member. As Chief Flossie said, collecting the data and parsing it out over the last few months, 4 years into this journey as a separate service under the Department of the Air Force, we just started recently trying to pull out Guardian-specific data out of the reports that were being rolled up at the DAF level inside the Pentagon, so we can get an understanding of, from a Guardian-specific culture, what does that look like? And are the victims and survivors of sexual assault and sexual harassment, can we collect that data and parse it out for Guardians? In addition to that, because many of the Space Force installations where our Guardians are also have a lot of airmen that are there as well. So being able to report back and say, for example, at Peterson Space Force Base, what is the climate that's there to not only understand assaults are happening for Guardians, but also for the airmen that are there. So trying to get the data so that we can analyze it, as you referenced it, what does it mean? We would hope that, sometimes we say, trust in leadership, that survivors are comfortable to come forward and talk about their experience, right? And report assault is important, but understanding whether or not that is an increase or a comfort level with, have we removed barriers, trying to restricted reporting, standing up at the Office of Special Trial Counsel, all these things to instill confidence in men and women coming forward and reporting it, understanding more work has to be done. Is it because they're more comfortable now with leadership and they feel the support structure is there, or is there still an untenable culture where assault is still occurring? And we'll have to take that for the record. We're still pulling the data apart, but I couldn't tell you what it's telling us at this point, other than the fact we know we need more fidelity in the data we're collecting.
Thank you. And now that the reporting is outside the chain of command, thanks to the change in the law and the president's executive order, this should be a priority so that you can, because you have that mechanism. And then just lastly, very quickly, you're dealing with old data. I mean, you're getting reports in 2024 that are from 2022. And so you're not even looking at what the current situation is. What steps are being taken to make sure that you can process data that helps you look at it more currently so that you're getting a more real-time window into the problem? If you don't know the answer to that question, then I hope.
Ranking member, I can
Please.
give
Thank
you
you.
a tangible one there. So between our sharp SMEs, subject matter experts, and our IG schoolhouse, they came together in tandem and collaboratively came up with a new POI to actually train independent investigators on sexual harassment, because a part of this is the length of time. And so the longer that takes to be adjudicated while taking care of the victim, obviously simultaneously, the data just gets older and older, to your point. And so that's a key effort for us.
Thank you very much. And if you could get those answers to me for the record, I'd appreciate it. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank our witnesses for taking the time to be here today. I know that we all share in the commitment to making sure that our service members, both abroad and here at home, are taken care of. Military relies heavily on local communities to provide access to health care to our service members, especially in areas where there is limited on-base care. This is particularly true for bases where Defense Health Agency has planned to restructure or close hospitals and clinics as part of the recent efforts to reform how the DoD provides healthcare to both active duty and non-active TRICARE beneficiaries. The Defense Health Agency plan hinges on a community healthcare system that can provide essential services in a timely manner to both service members and civilians in need of care. Recently, Ridgecrest Regional Hospital, which supports service members stationed at Naval Air Weapons Station China Lake, announced that they would be suspending their labor and delivery services due to unprecedented financial challenges. This loss in care means our service members at China Lake will need to drive almost 2 hours to the next closest labor and delivery unit, which places an incredible hardship on our service members and their families. Ridgecrest Regional Hospital is just one of 55 critical access hospitals within a 40-mile radius of a military base. These critical access hospitals are federally designated as essential to providing healthcare services in rural communities. I'm incredibly concerned that with the continued impacts of COVID-19, significant healthcare professional shortages, and low reimbursement rates, these hospitals will not have the resources they need to continue to provide services to our service members. Question for the Navy and then all branches. Master Chief Hone, I know that Navy is tracking this issue, and I'm wondering if you have identified any possible solutions to leveraging existing Navy or DHA resources to support community hospitals that provide critical healthcare service to our military. If nothing has been identified at this time, does the Navy have an interim plan to support any pregnant service members or spouses at China Lake? Is it possible to provide labor and delivery care on base? And then I'd like to open up the question to anyone else on the panel who might have similar concerns.
Congressman, I thank you, sir, for your attention and understanding of a problem that's happening in Ridgecrest. It's a small community, and that it has your attention gives me a lot of comfort to understand that it's not just us paying attention to this problem. The transformation of the Defense Health Agency has relied largely on being able to access medical care outside our military fence lines. And that transformation was based on assumptions that existed prior to COVID. And then just as you described, many of those assumptions are no longer viable or no longer exist outside our military fence lines. And that is manifesting itself in different ways in different locations. Pregnancy, delivery, obstetrician services available in Ridgecrest. We have similar problems up in the Bremerton area where we used to have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 15 clinics that someone could go to. Now there are 3 on that peninsula that are no longer accepting any new TRICARE patients. So our service members and family members are having to drive down to Joint Base Lewis McChord, an hour and a half or so away. What we're doing in those locations, Ridgecrest, there was a lot of discussion with our Bureau of Medicine and Surgery and our Surgeon General, and along with the administrators of that Ridgecrest Community Hospital to do all the things necessary to keep them open, not just for obstetrician services, but across the board. And we're making a lot of headway in solving what those problems are, specifically to somebody that is a pregnant service member, but also other things that we're no longer able to provide and feel confident in providing that medical service care to that individual. We're looking at that place like we would any other remote location or overseas location where medical services are restricted. And we'll have to restrict assignments to those locations until we can provide that medical care. Perhaps relocate service members who need that type of care so they can deliver somewhere else. And that's going to have to be across the board until we get this all solved. This is a departmental issue. It's not something that's Navy specific. Our Deputy Secretary of Defense has tackled this on personally and is helping us solve our military healthcare system.
I appreciate that, but and we had this fight a number of years ago over Lemoore, the base closest to my home, and they shut down the facility there. They're leaning on the hospital in the city of Hanford, which is only a 15, 20-minute drive away. But as we see this continuing in many rural communities across the country, I mean, just in my district alone, we've had 2 or 3 different hospitals close over the last number of years. And if it wasn't for one larger hospital outfit coming in and saving a couple of them, we wouldn't have the resources there. And it's frustrating to see across all the different branches. And I don't know if anyone else wants to add to this or what they're seeing in their area.
Sure, Congressman, I'll take the opportunity to also agree with my teammate here. We're struggling in this space. We recently just came to an agreement with DepSecDef to surge our medical service members into our medical treatment facilities to help cover down and shorten times it takes to be seen. And it's just another example of what we're doing inside with uniformed personnel for the Army side of the house. Our combat medics, there's a balance between the amount of time they spend working inside the clinic, because there is goodness there when they're actually working on medical skills, but then how much time they spend with their warfighting unit preparing for their wartime mission. And so there is this tension. We also see this in our MEP stations, in our entry processing stations also, where we're struggling and we're trying to surge medical personnel also to ensure we don't lose any potential recruits.
The opportunity is there to Sergeant Major.
Sergeant. It's it's the all volunteer force, right? So we promised that to the family member and the service member. I think that's where you're going with it, sir. It's dangerous. It's to recruiting and retention when they don't see it. It's war fighting. The service member is not focused, right? Because they're worried about having to go further away. They're not at work. They're not fixing an F-35 engine. They're not doing live fire ranges, and they keep falling back further and further in training. So there's some issues to be resolved for sure, sir, and appreciate you bringing that forward.
I imagine I've got someone in my district right now that she is due the day before her husband is due to return home. And if she's going to commute to a hospital alone and have to drive hours, that's not going to make life a lot easier. And I imagine the warfighter is not sleeping well, not focused on their responsibilities, and not doing the best they possibly can to fight for our nation, knowing that their family isn't being taken care of. So I appreciate the concern, and Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me extend my welcome to our esteemed witnesses, and let me express my gratitude to each of you for your service to our nation. Your testimony today is invaluable for informed decision-making and safeguarding the welfare of our soldiers, their families, and our nation's security. I want to touch on 3 items today that I'd like to quickly explore with you. First is the issue of food insecurity. Last year, the RAND National Defense Research Institute revealed that 25.8% of active duty members face food insecurity. And they noted that military and veterans experience double the national average of food insecurity. Military personnel are often hesitant to seek assistance due to pride, stigma, concerns about appearing weak or dependent. So I'd like to know how your service is collaborating with external partners to combat food insecurity issues, and what are your projections for the future of your approach? The second issue has to do with the basic needs allowance. I noted that in FY25 in the budget request, it includes a proposal to raise the income eligibility threshold for the basic needs allowance from 150% to 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. Military Times tells us that 77 military families across the Air Force, Army, and the Navy received the basic needs allowance in 2023, which is about 1% of the 6,000 service members that are deemed potentially eligible. And given this limited potential, can you provide insights into how you expect the impact of the expansion of that eligibility threshold will benefit, and how that will impact our families? So the final question has to do with the stress and burnout. The FY budget will reduce the in-strength by 5,700 personnel. The Army will lose 1,700, the Navy 5,000, and the Naval survey revealed that a third of sailors reported severe or extreme levels of stress in 2023. Given the fact that we've got worldwide tensions and trending conflict escalation, what measures are being implemented to address this trend, and how are you going to do more in terms of dwell time and dealing with the stress level and the overwork with a reduction in the troop level, in the in-strength?
Congressman Bishop, I think I'll start, if that's okay. So first, let me start by saying thank you very much for your attention on this issue. I think we all agree that no member or family who's wearing a cloth of their nation should be food insecure or not having the food on the table. That's just unacceptable. So as a Space Force, how are we getting after that? One is part of it's education. And I mean education, and are we teaching our young families, our young enlisted members specifically, not only how to budget the amount of money that is in their paying compensation, but also what are they eating and how are they eating? Under the food insecurity discussion, when we try to define food insecurity, some of it is not that there isn't enough food to eat. It's just that men and women are not eating the right foods, not eating healthy food. So part of the education campaign from a nutrition standpoint is that they understand when they go to the dining facility or go down to a restaurant or fast food, that they're making positive choices on the foods that they should be able to eat to get after that. So education on finance and nutrition is one approach that we're taking from a service perspective. On the BNA discussion, you're right. We are looking at looking for authorization to raise the threshold of the poverty line up to 200 and see what that looks like. But overarchingly, again, right, and I think the SEAC has talked about this, is that from a financial perspective, we have to make sure the service members have at least enough money in the bank account so they can, before they can budget appropriately, to make sure that they are buying the right foods and having the right access to the foods. Across, I think, the Department of the Air Force and the installations that are Space Force installations, there's a review going on where they're going on to installations specifically and looking at what are the choices available on base? What are the hours of the dining facility for men and women who are working shift work
Experience
on
cream
weekends?
machine, and
Can they
can I
access
get
to healthy
chocolate
food so
chip?
that they could eat appropriately, making the right
Pressing
decisions?
questions.
But on the
for
BNA
President
front,
Biden.
if we raise it to 200%, which I think will be helpful, but again, the pay and compensation overarchingly, we need to make sure that our members are compensated enough so that those are the rare exceptions, maybe with unique circumstances, extremely large families, which I think the service members, I think there's 35 across the Department of Defense today, Department of the Air Force today. And I think those are individuals with extremely large families that are getting the BNA. The other thing I would ask, and this is with the BNA specifically, sometimes it's late to need because the way that the calculation works, it goes on the previous year what you earn. So if there's a a family member who loses income in the middle of the year to try to apply for BNA, they have to wait until the January of the following year to be able to, provide their financial documents to earn the BNA stipend. So that's something we have to look at to make sure it's acceptable to service.
So maybe it ought to be a real-time opportunity for service members to apply when that happens, as opposed to having to wait till the next year. That seems like an easy fix for that issue.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
But
it's
I'm
a
more,
review.
I'm more concerned with the general income levels that prevent service members, particularly low-ranking members, from being able to do that. Sergeant Major Weimer, do you have, from the Army's perspective, or even from the Navy, some ideas about this food insecurity? And I also really want to hear about the end strength reduction too.
Congressman, I'll try to touch on all three of those really quickly, be respectful of the time. When it comes to food, we are reevaluating our entire ecosystem, and that's exactly how we're looking at this. Whether it's the bus transportation, it's increased kiosks for available healthy food options, it's increasing our financial training for single soldiers and soldiers with dependents so they can understand budgeting, whether it's improvement with ordering from DLA, from the Defense Logistics Agency, to improve options for our warrior dining facilities. There's a long list of things there, but it's truly an ecosystem. And we're working with Army Material Command and our Installation Management Command to really make improvements on the entire ecosystem. I could put a fabulous restaurant in the center of one garrison, but if I don't have the bus to get soldiers there, they can't actually take advantage of that. On BNA, I will give you one example from the Army perspective. We currently, as of at least 3 days ago, 16 people taking advantage of BNA. And one that I'll highlight without a name is an E4 that lives at Joint Base Lewis McChord that had to have 9 dependents to qualify for the calculation. I had to have my team do the calculation on the whiteboard for me to truly understand between federal poverty guidelines and gross household income. And I felt like I needed an accounting degree to truly understand how to get soldiers to be able to take advantage, who qualifies. And then on the last one, on the end strength, that is a reality for us in the Army. It absolutely is. And I think this committee is aware of the changes in our R-struct, as we call it, our Army structure. Some of that is recruiting, and we're full court press on improving our recruiting. And I'm encouraged and the results we're seeing right now based off changes the Secretary and the Chief have recently made, but not letting off the gas. Still more proof to be demonstrated in those. But that is key for us to work on the end strength question. And then the demands globally are incredibly high, potentially some of the highest we've ever seen in uniform right now. And so those two things have to, one, either the demands have to lower or our ability to bring in new soldiers in the Army has to improve. We're monitoring both, sir.
So that end strength reduction, though, is going to really impact the stress level and the workload level, which will ultimately impact your recruitment and retention.
Right now, our retention numbers in the United States Army are solid, sir. I want to watch them by the eaches and the owns. Air defenders being probably the one that everyone's most aware of right now based off of global requirements. I get a bi-weekly report by rank of where we are on those. That's how closely we're monitoring that. But I acknowledge, sir, you're correct. If the demands don't decrease in some form or fashion and the input doesn't get back to where we need it, then we could potentially head towards a path of the stress you're referencing. But right now, I feel confident where we're headed with recruiting. Not overconfident, for the record, but confident. And then we're having to be extra judicious in meeting those requirements for the global combatant commanders.
Thank you, sir. I think my time has expired, but I thank the chairman for
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And gentlemen, thank all of you for your service and what you do for our enlisted warfighters every day and their families, which is why, one of the reasons here today. As the Department of Defense continues through the QRMC, Congress, we haven't waited on results of that. We've had some pay increases that we've already touched on. I'm hoping, it looks like this year, I think we're going to have, DOD is going to have a really good outcome for another pay increase. But one of the things that I worry about, and Master Chief, if you could speak to this, one of the things that comes up is how well do we compare when you talk about military service to our civilian counterparts? And when you look at the responsibility, I had the opportunity to go out on the USS Harry S. Truman to watch those men and women perform was amazing. How do you compare that to anything else in the world? I don't know how you do that. So in this QRMC, how do we make sure that we're offering pay commensurate with the duties that we're truly asking these men and women, and it's not just the Navy, it's everybody, but that we're asking them to do?
Thank you, Congressman. I greatly appreciate the question and giving me an opportunity to expound on my opening statement. That was exactly the point that I was trying to make about the level of responsibility and the high stakes that our sailors are operating with currently right now, operating over in the Babel Mendeb. And I gave you one small example. But just as you also said, Congressman, you go on board one of our aircraft carriers and the ground crewmen that are moving the aircraft around, if we were to make a mistake and have a ground collision mishap of a couple F-35s today, that's a Class A mishap. The tolerance is much higher much lower than it's ever been. And the responsibilities that are put on our service members are stronger and greater than they've ever been. So I do not believe that the comparison models that we've been using and that we're currently using in the QRMC is going to be giving us satisfactory or substantive change necessary to really address our pay issues across our enlisted force for sure. I think that we should be looking for a comparison model that isn't about similar age and education, and more about the level of responsibility and the expectations that we're putting on those service members. Something more along those lines. Exactly where we find that at, we could look at our other first responders that are operating in our communities, any number of other places. But that young 19-year-old that's working at the Starbucks is not the same thing that we're asking of our 19-year-olds that are serving in harm's way.
Amen.
Thank you, sir.
Let me also ask you this, because it kind of goes right into it, and I come from a Navy district in Jacksonville. And I know the sailors in Jacksonville at NAS Jackson Mayport, even though we've increased the BAH, there's a lot of challenges. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not sure. But the Navy is located on the waterfronts where property values are extremely high. So I think it creates some added problems for sailors who are trying to find affordable housing in areas where it's very, very difficult, and especially those enlisted men. Can you talk a little bit about the BAH, and is that being considered in the QRMC, or are they looking at those two things completely separately?
Congressman, how we compute the basic allowance for housing is also being considered. I'm hoping that I'm not a member of the QRMC, so I can't speak to the specific questions that they're going through to make the determinations. When I have an opportunity to speak with them, I will ask more and more if we're figuring ways to be more responsive to those challenges. As you described, the United States Navy in many good ways, we get to live in some wonderful places. But
Right.
that can become extremely challenging in economic times such as we have today, where rental markets and real estate prices are going up faster than we're able to respond with changes to our housing allowances. That can leave our service members, especially our most junior enlisted service members, in quite a quandary in that what they're paying out in housing allowance far outweighs in what they make in base pay. So it doesn't take very long for them to lose any kind of discretionary spending if they find themselves upside down in a rental market trying to survive in a high cost area like that, which goes back to Congressman Bishop's question about basic need allowance and food insecurity. I'll tell you, when I've been married to my wife, this August will be 35 years. So she's been with me for a very, very long time. And she can tell you more about, what it is like to try to manage a family budget, in a stressful time like that. But I can remember when we were younger, we would get done paying our rent, our bills. And I mean, by bills, I mean like electric bill. I don't mean like I had a charge card at Sears. We had very modest living. We had very small amount of money to go grocery shopping with every month to fill up our cupboards. And if there was ever a pinch on our budget, the first place we had to make changes was in our commissary budget. That's when we started to have to eat, hamburger helper, instant
Right.
soups and things along those lines, because that's what it demanded of us. That leads to food insecurity. If we look after the welfare, the well-being, I mean to say, and we pay our people appropriately, then we won't have to worry about things like basic need allowance or be overly concerned about food insecurity. You pay them appropriately, they'll figure out how to feed themselves. I feel pretty good about that.
Our recruitment and retention will go up
Yeah, for
significantly
sure.
as well. And I tell you, as you talked about all those things, as a former Navy dependent of an enlisted man, I can tell you, I've heard all those discussions at the kitchen table. And so I'm very proud that this group is concerned enough to want to do something about it. So thank you. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much to all of you. Really appreciate your time with us today and tackling some of these challenging issues that make it possible for our military to survive and thrive, and particularly taking on things like housing and childcare and healthcare, mental health. It's a long list, and we've been having a chance to talk about it all. Mr. Chair, I just wanted to quickly recognize I have a new staffer for this committee, Connor Friend, who's with us here today, who served in the Army. So we're very grateful to him for his service. And my partner will hate me to mention this, but he's in the back of the room, and he's a graduate of the class of 1975 West Point. So my brother was in the Navy. I'm really a Navy family, but I'm proud of having these two Army people with me here today and appreciate their service. So well, I got to tackle a little tough question on mental health. And thank you very much, Sergeant Major Michael Lohmeier. We had a chance to speak briefly, but I just want to talk to you about this. We had a really sad situation in our state. Army reservist went on a shooting spree in Lewiston last fall. In November, he killed 18 people and injured 13. We just had the release of an independent commission to investigate the facts of this tragedy, and they published an interim report. And one of the things that highlighted was that the shooter's chain of command notified on multiple occasions that there were serious mental health issues, which led to the commander ordering a mental health evaluation, subsequently restricted the shooter's access to all military weapons and ammunition. The mental health evaluation explicitly recommended that the commanding officer take measures to safely remove all firearms and weapons from the shooter's home. However, the commander did not report that information to the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office, so when he was returned home, that information was never made available. We're still waiting for the Army to publish some findings about this, but a couple of questions for you. When a service member is grappling with mental illness, as the Lewiston shooter clearly was, what does the military do to ensure civilian law enforcement is aware that this person should not be in possession of a firearm?
Congresswoman, thank you for that question, and my condolences go out for that entire situation. Horrific. I also thank you for acknowledging the fact that it's still an ongoing investigation, and so I'll try to answer without overstepping the bottom line in the active component, it is a much simpler solution. It just is, in the spirit of being very, very candid with you, much simpler. Chain of command has a very deliberate battle rhythm. In our National Guard and our reserve compos, it's a little bit different, especially when the soldiers are not currently on either Title 10 orders or Title 32 orders. Title 10 working for the federal government, 32 working for the governor at that time. It gets a little gray there. Now, I will say this, though. Every chain of command usually has a mechanism to still look after their soldiers, right? First and foremost is they're still a soldier, whether they were on Title 10 or Title 32 orders. Same for if they're having suicide ideations or they're in trouble with the law and potentially have weapons in their home. To your question, it's a little bit different. But the commanders have the ability to reach out to local law enforcement. I don't know a specific mandate. I'll have to get that for you for the record to be very specific. But then I also don't want to overstep the ongoing investigation. For us in the active component, that would be a senior mission command. The garrison that was responsible with the tenant unit that had said soldier, and the criminal investigation CID would be involved in that and would immediately notify local law enforcement of any threats or any danger.
Thank you for making it clear that that could have or potentially should have happened in this particular case. Do Reserve or National Guard commanders have the authority to confiscate a soldier's firearms?
Ma'am, I'll have to take that for the record for you.
Okay. Sort of more broadly, how are you developing a broader plan to address with issues with reservists and guardsmen in crisis? And I understand what you said earlier, and I appreciate that it's a lot trickier than someone on active duty because of the sort of in and out nature of their connection to the military.
So one tangible thing that we're trying to understand how we can bring resources to our Compo 2 National Guard and Compo 3 Reserve teammates is in our holistic health and fitness. Again, back to how do we get left? We get upstream to be more preventative. The battle drill to be reactive when a crisis happens. To your earlier question, how do we get left? We're trying to figure out how to resource and assist both those compos with H2F, as I referenced it before. That's really challenging when service members aren't on orders at all times. But what we're looking into is how could we use regional hubs where we mobilize and we train for the weekend and we train for 2-week annual training in the summers. Because truly those resources are finite when you're hiring. It's not just equipment. Those are sleep specialists and physical therapists and nutritionists and basically holistic health. It's not just a gym. We're trying to surge that to commanders in the reserve and the guard to be able to, invest in the welfare and the health of their soldiers.
Well, thank you very much for your answer. I really appreciate that. And I do appreciate, and many of you have addressed this already, that we're taking much more seriously mental health as a component of readiness, of wellness overall, that we are understanding how critically important that is. And I, of course, look forward to the Army publishing its findings. I know this community in my state is anxiously waiting for that. And I do hope that any lessons learned from this become part of future protocol and we can spare another community or another individual soldier themselves from any kind of harm. I've used up my time, but I do again want to thank you all. I would have been here to support the Navy. Thank you very much for, I know that the Navy is very important in Maine because of Bath Iron Works and the Portsmouth Shipyard. And so all of the things that we're talking about today, the housing component, the childcare, making sure that the sailors who are associated with that have those level of services. And I appreciate the conversation that many of my colleagues have brought up about that. So thank you for that. It's really critically important to retention and to them being able to do their best possible job. So thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Pender. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for serving this great country that we all live in. I'm going to give you the easiest question you're going to get today. This is for everyone, please. Yes or no? 5 minutes goes fast. Are military families the most valuable asset in your service? Sergeant Major.
Yes, Congressman.
Yes.
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 I'd agree. I'd agree. Now, no more softballs. Now it's time for high and inside. And Sergeant Major Ruiz gets the privilege here. When can military families expect the family separation allowance to be raised from 250 to 400?
Appreciate that, sir. Yes, we greatly appreciate the authority to go up to 400 from 250. It is very expensive, absolutely. To have a Marine forward and buying 2 sets of groceries, or it's just 2 sets of everything, so it gets expensive. The authority came, and now we're looking into where do we find the money and how fast can we find the money, what doesn't get paid. So I'll come back to you, sir. I don't have an answer for you two right now, but we understand that how critical that is.
This is the problem I have in Congress. Everybody says the right things. Everybody comes up here and we all advocate for these things. And half the time it's Congress not doing its part, but we did our part in this case, right? Last year we passed it from 250 to 400. I pushed very hard on that. That hadn't been done in decades. Now it's time for our actions to match up with our words as far as putting families above everything else. So I'm going to continue to push on that. We need to make this a priority, and it cannot just be words. It has to be actions. We owe that at a minimum. I think we'd all agree. We owe that at a minimum to our family members, especially those that are forward deployed, taking on these tough jobs. My next question is to Sergeant Major Weimer. Are federal funds issued to the Army being used or expected to be used on drag shows?
No, Congressman.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. I think this is very important. And look, I don't want to be talking about drag shows. I served 20 years in the military. I don't care the color of somebody's skin or who they pray to or what they do in their off time, but there is a perception issue that the services are doing other things other than training and fighting to win wars. And we have to get ahead of that. And we have to be very crystal clear in what these funds are going for. So I'd ask all of y'all, please consider that when you're having conversations, when you're going and visiting other places, is to make sure we're not using federal funds in order to go down some of these crazy rabbit holes. My next question is for Chief Master Sergeant Flosey. Joint Base San Antonio. Great idea, right? Let's pull out all resources. You get the question because the 2-star in the Air Force is the one that holds the purse strings. But the question in particular is the barracks there, the medical education and training. And look, the Army has 51% of this barracks. The Navy has 32% of this. The Air Force only gets 17% of it. But ultimately, this is the issue I have. And I visited this facility. Right now, I think there's 148 students that are being housed in Camp Bullis, about 35 minutes away, due to some of the issues at the barracks. What can we do to make this a priority? The joint base model, everyone shares in it, but somebody has to pay the ticket on it.
Thanks for the question, Congressman. We're certainly focused on that particular dorm at METC, Fort Sam Houston. So across the larger question of what to do at joint basing, I think is a great question that we need to look closer at. But to address this specific concern, in the DAF, we've programmed across the FIDEP nearly $500 million in MILCON. We have design money approved, and we think we'll be ready in FY26, given the design and MILCON appropriations come through. And so we appreciate your support, and it's critical to our ability to build medical readiness for our force.
Thank you for that. And you'll find this committee is committed to do our part and give you the resources for it. But when I read the San Antonio Express News and says, there's mold in the barracks again, once again, the impression is that the military isn't taking care of our families and our single soldier, sailors, airmen, Marines. And I know that's the furthest thing from the truth, but let's get this fixed, right? I'd also offer this. I've used some of my previous community projects to get Chow Hall in Camp Bullis up to speed. That hadn't been done in 50 years, and some other things. So once again, if there are projects that can be that I specifically can help get over the finish line, you have my commitment to doing it. But I can't select a project if you don't submit a project, right? So that's one of the things I look forward to working with all of you and your teams on the priorities you have, not only in my district in Texas, but across the country. Once again, this is the committee that I think you have the commitment for us to get that done. Thank you again, gentlemen, for your service to this country.
Thank you, Chair Carter and Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz. I want to thank all of our witnesses as the proud representative of military families at Creech and Nellis who all call Southern Nevada home. I appreciate all your service and your presence here to discuss these quality of life issues. My top quality of life concerns, like many of us, are related to military pay and compensation. I'm eager to see the outcome of the 14th quadrennial review of military compensation, but I also agree there are things that we can do right now to better support our service members. Access to affordable housing obviously remains a central stressor, especially for the junior enlisted in Nevada. Creech Air Force Base, as you know, does not have any on-site accommodations, forcing all the airmen to commute 50 miles one way to work each day. They face costs as high as $400 a month on gas. So just to put that in perspective, an E2 at Creech will spend about 30%, 1/3 of their base pay just to get to work to serve our country every day. This is why I fought for the requirement in the fiscal year 24 NDAA to mandate an assignment incentive pay feasibility study for those assigned to remotely piloted aircraft missions. Chief Flazzi, can you share any updates on how this study is going, and if you anticipate being able to use that type of pay to offset the significant fuel costs for our men and women at Creech?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. Thanks for your focus on our airmen assigned to Creech Air Force Base. So we are continuing to explore the feasibility of using assignment incentive pay. It is a mechanism that we've used in the past. From 2008 to 2012, we had a process in place to do this. And so it looks like we have the authorities inside the department at the discretion of the service secretary. So when our feasibility study is complete, we'll make a recommendation to the secretary, and we appreciate your support in any recommendation we make.
When do you anticipate the study to be complete?
Ma'am, I do not have a date, but I'd be happy to follow up
Yeah,
with you.
that'd be great. The sooner the better, obviously.
Absolutely. It's taking care of our airmen.
I'm moving on to childcare in Nevada and obviously across the country. Ensuring access to reliable childcare has become a major challenge for our military members. And on top of excessive wait times, the need for childcare during irregular hours and lengthy commutes to remote work locations like Creech have driven home the importance of having flexible childcare options. Yet there's still installations today with significant childcare challenges like the Naval Station in Fallon in northern Nevada that have, it's Nevada, not Nevada. I don't know why I said that. That have, I'm never running for president. That have not established an in-home family childcare program on their installation. This program not only meets irregular childcare needs, but also is a venue to provide spousal employment opportunities. If it's not consistently implemented DoD-wide with a streamlined certification transfer process for providers, this seems like a missed opportunity at two critical needs. Major Honey, I just wanted to ask, can you share how your service is incorporating family child care program into your strategy and what you have done to ensure that it might be available to all military families?
Yes, ma'am. We use child development homes, as a response to that similar program that you're discussing that the Army has. And I'm not aware of anything that is preventing them from opening up a child development home in Fallon, Nevada. I'll look into it and find out specifically that we're not preventing that, but it typically has to come down to an individual wanting to open up their home and create that business with inside their home. Then there's a screening process that goes along with that to ensure everybody in that home is suitable for having a child development home. And then there's a verification and certification process that goes along with that. It is rather lengthy. It's easier once somebody's already established one. So I'll need to find out specifically if there is a prevention for Fallon, but this is integral to our child development care needs across our force. And we have it robust in many places.
So let me ask, so the family child care program, you're saying the child development home is the same thing? Or is it a different certification process?
Ma'am, as I understand it, it is very much, very similar. There could be
Okay.
some differences, and I'm not as familiar with the other services programs as I am with the child development home.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm past my time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all gentlemen for being here today. As considering all of you are in kind of terminal rank and unpromotable, it's a great place to be, as my E9s used to always tell me. But you're all in a unique position to shape the force for the future. Hopefully, long after you're retired. I'm concerned by a lot of the things that we know are the problems that have been raised here today. And I just was seeing in this morning's press results of a survey by Blue Star families that you guys may have seen, but was really disconcerting to me. It said only 32% of military families would still recommend military service. And that pains me as a career Navy guy. I tell every young person I meet, going in the military was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I wish every young man and woman in our country could serve. That's a drop from 55% in 2016 to 32% in 2023. That's at a time that we've gone from, a hot war, though we seem to have been in one for a long time now, to notionally not being in a hot war. They'll tell that to all the folks out there on the front lines now. No surprise, time away from home was cited as a top issue, along with pay, spousal employment, access to childcare and healthcare and housing options, all things we've discussed here today. 73% of the survey respondents said they were paying more than $200 a month out of pocket for civilian housing options. And as Mr. Bishop had alluded to earlier, 1 in 4 enlisted respondents reported food insecurity. So a question I have for all of you, and we'll see how the time goes here, we might have to pick it up, but have we gotten, in your opinions, have we gotten to where we are because we funded the urgent at the expense of the important for far too long? Or are we seeing a fundamental shift in the pool of folks out there who are potential candidates to come into the military? So, because as we go to fix the problems, is it a matter of spending more money that we may have shorted and put to other resources, or do we need to fundamentally change our approach to what it's going to take to attract and retain these people? Because that's going to affect not only retention, but also how we bring them in the front door to begin with. So, Sergeant Major, if you could start with that.
Thank you, Congressman. Incredibly complex question. There's a lot there. Quality of life absolutely is part of that. Pressure on the force, to Congressman Bishop's question, that's absolutely part of that. The data, and my wife actually attended that event with my teammate here. He and his spouse actually spoke at it. I would like a little bit more fidelity in the data, because again, which they've promised us, the eaches and owns, to look at that. Because right now, like, our retention data is really good. So people are staying in the service. So they believe in the mission, though we still have these stressors. And so my concern is, I don't want to reach a breaking point to the core of your question. I think there's a lot to that. I think there's people we see it in the Army for sure. People are having families later in life. I'm an Army brat. That was very unusual growing up as an Army brat. And now it's not unusual at all to see lieutenant colonels and colonels in command that have little ones running around. That was not a normal. And so the family stability piece is a little bit more important than it used to be. And the amount of PCSs is a little different. So there's a lot there, but I acknowledge why you're asking the question, and those stressors do exist. And it is a concern.
All right, Master Chief.
Yes, sir. I would, simple answer is yes and yes. I do believe that it's those stressors. And yes, I do believe it's a matter of us overfunding the urgent compared to the important, and I do believe also that it's a matter of fact of the people that are coming to serve are a little bit different than you or I are. Now, when I joined the service, the majority of my leadership when I first came in were Vietnam vets. And their approach, to answering my questions was typically shut up. That's why. And I was fully acceptable of that kind of a response. Our young men and women that are coming to serve today don't find that to be an acceptable response. They want to be respected and to be considered a full and complete member of this team. And they want to be respected as such. I don't have any problem with that. We just need to understand that. But and I don't believe that the decision to fund that urgent, and what we need to be funding as the important should be in competition with one another.
Right.
I would offer that, is that, as I said earlier, talking about the sailors that are operating in the Babel and Deb, I want them to have all the weapon systems they need to have. I want them to have all the munitions that they need to have to fight and win. I want that to be a complete success. At the same time, I want their well-being to take into consideration. I don't think these things should be in competition with one another.
Right.
Them being warfighting competent and their well-being should be complementary to one another, and that should be all of our collective priorities. That is the things that we should fund together. If we do that, we'll meet most of these issues and we'll solve a lot of these problems. The issues you just described were the exact things that I mentioned in my opening statement as the 5 pillars, and then I offer that 6th pillar that we needed to have from the Gates Commission to maintain that all volunteer force. As I move around and I speak with family members and service members, their chief complaints are inadequate pay and compensation that they're dissatisfied with. They're dissatisfied with housing that they're being provided. They're dissatisfied with timely access to quality medical care, as we've talked about earlier already. We also talk about making sure that we remain ourselves as a reflection of the American people that we serve. We've had a break in trust with our American people, and that includes a break in trust of the American people that serve in our military. We have to do much better at taking care of them and them fully believing that this is an organization has their well-being in mind. If we meet those things, we're going to come a long way. Another thing is reconnecting them to us as an organization. When I was younger in this military, everything that I did drew me to that installation, whether it was Easter egg hunts with my kids, going to the pool at the installation, meeting everybody. That was just a greater connection that we had and made a larger Navy family.
It seems to be missing now, though.
Yes, sir, because we've underfunded that part of and those connections aren't happening anymore. So now, our sailors, service members, and their families are enrolling their children in youth sports in the communities they live in, not the youth sports on the installation. Those things that used to draw us together, that they give you that greater sense of belonging and have a healthier connection to that organization. We're endeavoring in the Navy to try and rebuild a lot of that connection back. I think that'll go a long way in satisfying what some of those chief complaints were out of the Blue Star family report. But I'm going to tell you that they're not off. What they had to say and what they found in their survey is we go around speaking with our service members and their families.
Well, thank you, Master Chief. Judge, I'm well beyond my time, but I will have a question I want to submit to you, Master Chief, about the decision to open up the enlistment to folks without high school diplomas. I've got a lot of concern about that. When we've moved out of that in the past, we acknowledge it was a bad decision. Looks to me like an example of if your standards are too high, lower them, but I know we're beyond time, but I would love to follow up with you more about that.
Yes, sir. I'll be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wasserman-Schultz has requested another round.
Thank
There won't
you.
look like be very many people around it.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I'll let her go first.
Thank you. And I associate myself with the gentleman's remarks about reducing standards and allowing people who do not have high school diplomas to enlist. That would not be a step in the right direction, in my opinion. So I would also be interested in that information when you share it with him. So I'd like to hear from each of you back to the barracks issue. If your service is considering unaccompanied housing privatization efforts, and if so, further elaboration on why you think privatization would likely result in better housing for our service members, because that's certainly not the track record of family housing. And I would envision, and I've been on this sub since 2014 in a leadership role, I would envision us having in the not too distant future, hearings like we had with family housing companies and service members and personnel who oversee those in the sub, because the privatization process is a failure in terms of keep maintaining the quality of life of housing. So if you could share those plans and if there are any in your service.
Ranking Member, thank you for that. And we also share some concerns from past history, which is why we are measuring twice to cut once in this space. We've had a couple other small pilots, really at Fort Meade, and then one that's getting ready to start down in Miami to assist with U.S. Southcom. But they're not true privatized pilots like the one we're getting ready to start at Fort Irwin. That would be a true unit-based pilot for the soldiers out of Fort Irwin. We are going to analyze that and let that take place without rushing it, because I also have some concerns with holding them accountable, still being able to influence roommates and have some cohesive leadership responsibilities, as we would say in the Army, with involvement inside that actual facility. Now, right now, it looks promising in the sense of that pilot's going to allow us to do what we want to do to truly test the bounds of our ability to influence that. But the Secretary and the Chief, we're moving out smartly with that and not rushing to this to be a silver bullet to solve our investment strategy with barracks.
Master Chief.
Yes, ma'am. I would offer that our greatest failure with privatized military family housing was in the area of oversight.
Right.
Too many of our leaders, as you described earlier in your opening remarks, had abdicated their responsibility, to their service members and those families, and providing that oversight to ensure our private partners were delivering on their promises. We're doing much better in that area. And as long as we continue with our responsibility in providing that oversight, our military family housing is going to continue to improve. Our pilots that we're running in private barracks, like Pacific Beacon, have been operating because we've not abdicated our responsibility in providing that oversight to ensure that our private partner is delivering on the promises that they're going to make. If we can continue along that way, we're going to do resoundingly well. I think that they're going to be faster at meeting our need than we are with current MILCON projects. MILCON will take us 7 years. We can go a lot faster with PPV, whether they come in and they renovate currently existing buildings or they build new facilities to house our service members.
I have a concern of privatizing unaccompanied housing. It's for the Marine Corps, man, our barracks are part of sustaining that transformation. I need Marines in barracks having roommates. I need Marines to have an NCO down the hall to take care of an issue. So will we run a pilot maybe in areas where it's probably, and they don't want to be alone in a room and spread all over the base and station. So for us, it's important to take care of what we have today. And with your help, we're getting after it.
Thanks. Chief Fossey.
Thank you, Ranking Member. So in our department, we're assessing privatized unaccompanied housing independent from just first-term airmen in dorms. So that it could be anybody that arrives at a location without dependents. And we're looking very specifically at locations where there's two types of challenges. They're either remote and isolated and there's not adequate housing in the community, excessive commute times, things like that, or the housing market is incredibly competitive and our BAH rates, as we've discussed earlier, they lag the economic changes that make it really difficult for our families to live near the installation. So in those two circumstances, we're assessing the feasibility and we're paying close attention to the Navy and the lessons that they've learned so that we don't replicate some of the mistakes that came through our initial contracts that we learned accountable through that process as well. Between the categories of accountability through those contracts, we've recouped more than $118 million from contractors for issues for health and safety, mold, things like that across our housing projects in the department.
Thank you. Chief Vandevank.
Ranking Member, so the Space Force has partnered with the Air Force as far as the the dormitories go. This is the Department of the Air Force issue that we're looking at together. So there's no discussion on the Space Force side to look at privatize for the dormitories or for the barracks, if you will. But from a service perspective, ours is unique for the guardians that are coming into the service. Going into an enlisted guardian today is over 22 years old. A lot of them do already have some families. Most have some college with master's degrees and bachelor's degrees. So it's a different type of individual that we're bringing into the dormitories today. So we're looking at what that means for dorm life, if you will, and what that infrastructure looks like. But from a privatization perspective, we're attached to the hip with the Air Force under the Department of the Air Force on the way forward.
Okay, and since it really seems like the Navy and the Army are more focused on this, I'm concerned about making sure that you have practices and priorities in place to ensure that the quality of housing for service members won't be compromised. We have a track record that is abysmal with family housing, and I agree because that's why we added $130 million of oversight funding that we keep adding additional funds for, so that we can ensure that there really is, close-up oversight. But I'm specifically interested, and then I'm done, Mr. Chairman, on what changes you're making to the lease terms and oversight activities to better hold privatized housing providers to account, and what options will DoD have to pull out of the agreements if private companies don't live up to the required standards? Because we're stuck in nearly all cases with the family housing. And, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. It doesn't make sense to not make sure we have course corrections or not do what we have already seen doesn't work.
Ranking member, acknowledge we've learned a lot on this journey, oftentimes too slow, though, to your point. And so some of the things that we're trying to do, the inspection and the oversight piece is critical. And we saw we weren't doing inspections properly, and we weren't meeting time standards to make sure that we truly had the work orders that were knocked out between leases, between that gap between two people occupying a location. That was where we found our weakness. And so we had to go back and we had to retrain. It's called between occupancy maintenance. There's a goal of 10 days or less. That's Installation Command's goal, because we're stacking families up in temporary housing while we're waiting on that. The problem was that we were trying to go too fast just to get the people out of that. And so we couldn't do that. And so unfortunately, right now, we're not meeting that goal across 41 different locations. We're actually a 17-day average, and that average isn't nearly as good as it sounds, because the larger locations like Fort Moore or actually Carson, they're upwards of 23 to 64 days in between, which is unacceptable. Part of that is staffing, having the right amount of people to go in and actually take care of these. Because once we inspect it and identify things, the clock is still continuing. So the response for the work orders, and then the safety and health, as you know, because I know you're super passionate like we are about the lead and other things before people occupy a house. I live in an old house that has to have that level of inspection before I actually moved into it. And so retraining what an actual inspection is, and then decreasing the amount of time to tackle identified issues are two of the Army's oversight pieces that we're surging to increase.
Isn't some of this that the private companies need to provide the proper staffing levels to be able to process the transition and address the health and safety needs?
It is, and the quarterly meetings that our general officers and SESs, our senior mission command teams, are now doing with the privatized housing companies is actually starting to have that impact, because it's accountability, and they can be penalized financially when they're not actually meeting their objectives.
I just hope this raises a caution flag on moving forward on barracks and unaccompanied housing, because I don't trust them. They are willing to take massive fines just as a cost of doing business, and then they do it again. So I would just really consider this a very big caution flag here that could down the road result in language coming from me. So
Acknowledge, ma'am.
Chief?
Ma'am, fully understood your concern and your caution. I will endeavor to have a better understanding of what we're doing differently as we enter these agreements. As I've said, the PPV partners that we have for unaccompanied housing have been operating for 20+ years,
Mhm.
and we've had nothing but success from those. What the difference is between that as far as the contract and how we hold them accountable in the language in the agreement that we've made with them, I need to have a better understanding to give you that answer, to give you the same confidence that I have in them.
Okay, if you could submit that for the record, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is the chairman talking without his microphone on
For the,
again?
Where they're getting their money and you're holding back some of their money until you see them doing what they're supposed to do, and you'll hold it for 20 years. If they don't do it, it gets their attention. I've worked on some housing projects around, and that gives great incentive to start doing maintenance. Thank you for being here. I wanted to tell you that I've got a bill that I have introduced twice, and I plan to get it done this time. It's a Military Spouses Hiring Act. It allows the businesses that hire spouses a special tax break. And because the fact that you move around so much, they can't get the good jobs. And by the way, as far as Cavazos is concerned, y'all need to be training up soldiers to do jobs at these factories that are going up in Williamson County. We've got a $200 billion investment by Samsung that's going to have a huge amount of employment. And as these guys are getting out of the Army or any of the force services in our neighborhood, there are going to be lots of jobs there, lots and lots of them. Already have 26,000 people on the building site. And that's a pretty good job too. Listen, thank you, all of you. Appreciate you very much. You give us the real story, and that's important. So I know who runs the military. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We recess.
Okay. I don't know the chairman's name. Okay. As I can't manage my own channel. I was going to say, I think it might be time for him to retire, but maybe I shouldn't say that because someone might say the same thing about me. All right, guys. So I have a couple things I wanted to show you. So you might have watched this with me a while back, but there was another hearing, and one of the representatives touched on this a little bit, but I want to get into this just a tad more. So let me pull this up. Where is it? This one? Yeah. Okay. And this was a hearing on progressive ideologies in the military. And let's just listen to this part for a second.
Lieutenant Colonel Lohmeier, thank you for your service and for being here today. In 2021, the United States Military Academy, West Point, taught cadets critical race theory through a seminar titled Understanding Whiteness and White Rage. At an Armed Services Committee hearing earlier this year, or last year, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, was questioned about teaching critical race theory at the service academies. General Milley defended the practice, saying he thought it was important for those in uniform to be, quote, open-minded and openly read, end quote. He went on to state, quote, I want to understand white rage and I'm white, end quote. In your experience as a squadron commander with the U.S. Space Force, would learning about whiteness and white rage help promote unit cohesion or a team-centered culture?
The answer is anyone who's focused on warfighting doesn't naturally think to talk about these things in the military workplace. We're focused on a particular mission in defense of the country to deter conflict and to win our nation's wars. I do want to make one additional point, if I may, that the general has just explained that he never saw critical race theory in his time at West Point or in his lengthy honorable military career. In doing research for my book that got me fired, I found that West Point cadets who had recently graduated, these are impressive people, black, white, clearly leftist in their political worldview, had produced a 40-page policy proposal, is what it was called, that I consider a communist screed, anti-American, race-baiting, accusing leaders at West Point of failing the American people, criticizing West Point as an institution for racism, criticizing them for failing the Army, and that they would continue to fail the Army. What I found in that document is that this general's work is quoted throughout the entire 40 pages. So you can't say that you've never been exposed to critical race theory when a bunch of left-wing Marxist-leaning students attack the West Point Military Academy relying on your work. And so I'd be curious to find out if they consulted with him in the production of that 40-page policy proposal to topple statues at West Point, to rename buildings. When that kind of invitation came to me as a commander to rename streets and buildings, everyone at the base was allowed to populate the Excel spreadsheet that came to us as a tasker from the Pentagon. And I saw George Washington's name on that list because ideology that poisons the mind doesn't disambiguate between racists, evil men, and good men, and patriots. What they did is they said, he is a founder, he's white, I hate him, and we'd like to remove his name from buildings and streets. This is the kind of thing that ideology does to the military. It divides people. And the best evidence we've seen so far, 10 more seconds, is the recent testimony from university presidents who tried to excuse and contextualize genocidal rhetoric. And what CRT, diversity, equity, and inclusion mandates, and Marxist ideology do to a university president or to the Chinese PLA, they will do to an American service member. And I've seen it firsthand.
Thank you. I think it would be wise for the committee to follow up on the report that you're talking about. So I hope we'll be able to do that. According to the Department of Defense website, its mission is to, quote, provide the military forces needed to deter war and ensure our nation's security, end quote. Do you think that teaching our future military leaders about whiteness and white rage will better prepare them to deter war and defend our nation?
No, I do not.
And do you believe promoting divisive concepts, you've, I think, indicated this, like critical race theory, have an impact on military recruitment and retention?
Well, I've got some polling data here that if we have time, I can cite, but this is one of the prevalent themes that shows up among active duty service members who have been polled about their concerns about the direction the military is headed, why they're choosing to leave the service, and young Americans, why they're choosing not to join. They sometimes call it wokeness, that's colloquial, but they specifically, if they know what they're talking about, refer to critical race theory, and if you know what you're talking about, you know that it's rooted in Marxist ideology.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter to the record any document that Mr. Lohmeier has, such as that survey in the minutes of this hearing.
Okay, hold on, let me just fix that. So yeah, that is a great hearing. We watched that a little while back. I can put it in the description for anyone who wants to hear more about it. So that is Matthew Lohmeier. His book, I have it, is called Irresistible Revolution, the Marxism's Goal of Conquest and the Unmaking of the American Military. And the reason that I wanted to play that is because I think that is something that I'm hearing more and more about. Yeah, please. It's a great, it's really fascinating. He has a channel, though he hasn't posted his here, so you can see his name, Matthew Lohmeier. He has a channel, but he hasn't posted in a while, so I'm not sure if he's still doing anything with it, but he does have some videos up on his channel, and he has done some interviews. I haven't watched all of them, but he's definitely a really interesting guy. And, I think that's something that is becoming much more prevalent, not only in our military, but also in our society. He's calling it Marxism. I call it communism, or socialism, depending on what kind of flavor of infiltration we're looking at. They're all related to a certain extent. Marx is the father of socialism, but and communism is a form of socialism. So I mean, that's something we can get into on another on another show if you guys are interested in learning a little bit more about that. It is very interesting, but it's something that we're seeing is sort of just infiltrating our government, right? You know, and I talk, sure you're sick of hearing me say it, but I brought up the Democratic Socialists of America. Um, they are absolutely infiltrating our government. We have 4 in the House or in Congress right now. Over 200 elected state officials are active members of Democratic Socialists of America. And you know, and Matthew Lohmeier is telling us it's also seeping into the military now. And in a lot of different aspects, and the military is having a problem right now with recruitment, and part of that is there was a directive. I can't remember what it was. The title of it was basically they were trying to hire more minorities than white people because they wanted a certain percentage, which to me is, if someone wants to join the military and they're able and capable, you should hire them. You shouldn't be discriminating based on their race, whatever their skin color is. I don't care. As long as they're there and they want to do their patriotic duty and they're physically able to do so, why are we discriminating on them? And it's absolutely crazy. And I came across something on X the other day. It was either yesterday or the day before, something someone posted, and it really resonated with sort of what Matthew Lohmeier is talking about, what I've heard from other people who have been in the military. And I wanted to show you guys and just read it to you and get your thoughts on this as well. Okay, so his name is Steve. Steve Loves Ammo. Great name. Let me make sure this is big enough that you guys can read it well. There we go. I think that's a little bit better. Okay, I'll read it to you. So this was, it doesn't say right on here. This was, I think, 2 days ago. Okay. Some truth about today's military. I know I'm going to hurt someone's feelings, but I don't give a singular shit. This one is going to be very long-winded because the military is what I am truly passionate about. I appreciate your time. It actually pains me to write this because some of my best years of my life were in the United States Army. I've made many lifelong friends that I still keep in touch with. It gave me a great sense of pride to have served in the greatest fighting force the world has ever known. It made me the man, excuse me, it made me the man that I am today. I was even able to obtain my bachelor's degree because of it. I'm very thankful to have been afforded the opportunity to serve my country, but I have something to get off my chest. The state of our military is completely fucking unacceptable. Lack of leadership. General Milley and Lloyd Austin, Mr. White Rage book reading, and Mr. I'm going to kick you out of the military if you don't get the vaccine. I have never seen 2 men at the highest levels of military leadership be such pussies. I'm just reading what he wrote. You both should be ashamed of yourselves and quit your positions immediately. I'm not saying he's wrong, by the way. Military readiness. Now, diversity is our strength is a slogan used by Democrats to further push their agenda. That is 100% accurate. Sorry, but our enemies do not give 2 shits about inclusion or diversity. They're laughing at us. Whatever happened to, we have the greatest military fighting force on the planet and we will kick your ass if you fuck with us. Morale is at an all-time low, I think he meant to say. I know this because of soldiers I speak to that are still in. No one has cared about race, gender, or any of that shit. All we care about is that patch that is on our right shoulder, the American flag. Not embracing American nationalism is what is wrong with this country. What happened to your pride to be an American? Military members are pawns. Let's face it, the military has been used as a political talking point between politicians for almost 100 years now. The left and the right are culpable. They will go after your emotions and say they support our troops, but they are lying. Politicians do not care about us. If they did, they would create a single bill that, if not fluffed up with additional bullshit that they want to waste our tax money on. The very uncomfortable truth is that they will send us to wars that they created and leave us behind in the process. Afghanistan drawdown. What an absolute disaster. I spoke with a mother of a Marine that was there providing security in Afghanistan when the drawdown took place and was present during the attack. The mother told me the average age of everyone there was less than 24. Most of them were less than 6 months out of boot camp. When the attack happened, there was chaos. They did not know the rules of engagement. The drawdown disaster only happened because they wanted to be opposite of Trump. Congratulations, morons. Veteran homelessness. Why is this still a thing? There are tens of thousands of homeless veterans that have not been taken care of. This morning, I thought about solutions to the problem, and I literally found an idea that would probably work. Why don't we house our homeless veterans on military installations nationwide? It's the least we could do since military installations are housing illegal aliens and Afghan refugees. Recruitment. I don't blame recruitment levels being at an extremely low level. Who would want to die for a country that indoctrinates and leaves their soldiers behind? No one that's worth a shit, at least. I honestly really don't care about opinions of those opposing these ideas, especially from those who never served or even left America. This is my take. Write your own post. I have so much more to write because I am angry. Our troops deserve much better than this. Want to support our troops? How about being the America worth serving? Rant over. Thanks for listening. God bless America. I thought that was a great post. He was right. He did have a lot. For the love of God. What is wrong with me today? But can anyone argue with any of the things that he said? I don't think you can. And I sit there and I look at what is going on right now with these illegal immigrants, as many of us are doing right now. And it makes me so incredibly angry on a number of different levels. But the thing that, aside from the fact that they are invading our country and raping and murdering and wreaking havoc of all kinds, is the fact that they're being treated better than our veterans. That should anger everyone. These are men and women that have fought. It's certainly not something that I did. I sit here and I talk about it, but they actually risked their lives for our freedoms, for our right to sit here and talk about these things. And we have people who are committing a crime when they enter this country. The moment they set foot in this country, they are already committing a crime, and they're being treated better and taken care of better than our veterans are. They get free health care. They get free housing. They get monthly stipends of prepaid debit cards. They get licenses. They're trying to give them the right to vote. They're getting everything for free. For doing what? For what? For a vote? These veterans, our veterans, risked their lives. And many of them came back and will never be the same again. And yet, we can't take some money, instead of giving it to these illegal immigrants, we can't take care of our veterans. What kind of a fucked up country is that? What kind of a fucked up administration does that? And what kind of fucked up society allows that to happen and doesn't get aggravated and angry and shout and say, what the fuck is happening? I do it. I know you guys do it. But why aren't more people speaking up? To me, this is just horrific on so many levels. So many levels. Now, like I said, I never served in the military, but I come from a huge military family. My mom was in the military. My dad was in the military. I have brothers that were in special forces. My grandfather was in the military. My uncle was in the military. It goes all the way back, right, to the Declaration of Independence. We were there. And it makes me angry that these people are not being given the respect and the honor that they deserve. And yet these illegal immigrants are. They're getting it. For doing what? Committing a crime? It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. And I know a lot of you here, because we've been chatting in the chat, are veterans. So please feel free to tell me if you think that I'm wrong or you agree or disagree. Please feel free, speak your mind. This is a place where you can speak your mind. We are big defenders of the First Amendment here. And I just, it's craziness. It's craziness. Hey, Nathan. Nathan is a veteran as well. Yes. David is a veteran as well. David Hurley says it is disgusting. Chris Golan. Yeah, well, I didn't serve my country, so the very least is I can speak out against this. JBW, also a veteran. You're on the money. Thank you, guys. You know what? I love the fact that I have so many veterans in my audience. Even though the audience right now isn't very big, I have such an incredible audience that is filled with veterans and those who support them. That makes me more happy than having thousands of people here with me. Like this small audience that is full of men and women who served our country, and if they didn't serve it in the military, who support those who did and support the fundamental values of this country is just worth more than I can tell you. More than I can tell you. JBW said, this is sad what the military has become. It is. It really is. You know, I grew up on Air Force bases, and I was proud to be the kid of two people who served in the military. You know, and I'm incredibly proud of my brothers. I had one who was a Navy SEAL and one who was a Green Beret, and they are incredible people. They did things that I never could do. I mean, my brother who was a Navy SEAL, like the training alone would terrify me. But and he's no longer active duty, but he's now training Navy SEALs. So he's still contributing to that. And I just think they are some of the best people that I know. I really do. And I get choked up about it because to me, there's nothing better that you can do for your country than to serve it and put your life on the line. Oh, for crying out loud, what is wrong with me? Sorry, I don't cry about much. Those of you that know me I don't cry much. But the things that really get me teared up are our veterans and the national anthem for some reason every time. Every time I hear it, I tear up like a weirdo, but that's okay. That's okay. All I say is like, oh, I'm related to someone who signed the Declaration of Independence. It's in my blood. I can't help it. But, you know, because I love our country. I do. I love our country. And growing up in the military, I have been all over the world, really. You know, we've lived in many different countries. And I've seen many different countries. And, you know, I love people all over the world. I really do. I think that for the majority of people in this world, not governments, not politicians, but the actual people who live in countries, we're all very similar, right? We're all very similar. We all want sort of the same things out of life. But there is something about America. And I think that's why people want to come here. There's something about having certainty about civil liberties. And right now, those are at risk. You know, the Democratic Party is destroying our civil liberties one by one. And it's very difficult to sit back, and I know it is for you too, to sit back and watch it happen and just feel frustrated. I know I get frustrated on a daily basis seeing this happen to our country because our country was built on a revolutionary and amazing idea. And our Constitution is an incredible document. And the Declaration of Independence, equally incredible. Equally incredible. And we should be incredibly proud of that. It's very disheartening to see so many people just shitting on America and those that live here doing it, you know? And I know, you know, some of them are young and, you know, they have a right to say it, right? I can't sit here and say that I am a proponent of the First Amendment and say that I want them silenced because I can't say that. You know, they certainly have a right to say it, but it's the sentiment behind it. What's making them say it? That is one of the big problems we have in this nation right now is they have been brainwashed into thinking that America is a bad place. And they don't understand the immense freedom that they have in being an American. There is something about being an American that is unlike any other country in this world. And hold on just a second. Sorry, guys. Sorry, and I left the microphone on so you can hear me. My nose was running from tearing up. And I didn't want to wipe my nose in front of everybody. So incredibly gross, but hey, we're all human here, right? Lulu. But the sentiment behind these anti-American sentiments is it's concerning. And I think that I hope, are we, and this is what I tell myself, and this is what I'm telling my husband, that I think there's always a pendulum swing, right, in society. And so my background is in psychology, and also the law, but I worked more in psychology. And so I tend to look at things from like a combination of those two perspectives, the law and psychology, and the psychology of the law. And I think there's a pendulum swing in society, and it had gone from conservative, right? Starting, say, maybe in the 50s, it started to get more liberal and more progressive. And now we're at this point where we are kind of at this like uber progressive moment in society. And people are starting to see that these ideals that they have been taught and they have been told are good and wonderful and for the betterment of everyone are really just fucking everything up. And I'm hoping that we're starting to see a trend where more people are turning back to more conservative ideals. I think they're realizing that there is something worth looking at in conservative ideals. Now, I'm not saying you have to agree with everything that Republicans say. And honestly, I kind of call myself or refer to myself as a Republican in some certain circumstances, but to me, I care about the Constitution, and right now, the Republicans care about the Constitution more. At least the people, politicians. I know a lot of people get really angry with the politicians. I don't. They have a role to play, and part of their role is certainly some compromise, because it's not just Republicans in Congress, right? So I never get mad at one Republican and say you're not doing anything. You're full of you're just full of hot air. You're not doing anything. Stop. Like you're just all talk. How can we trust you? Because nothing that gets done in Congress is one person, right? They have to work together. There has to be some compromise, and our system was created that way, and there is a reason for that. But I'm hoping that there are going to be more people coming around and seeing the damage that is being done to our country, to our the mental state of our society. I don't think I'm being overly dramatic in saying that our republic truly is at risk right now. And we need to reclaim that republic. Like no more of this, oh, democracy is at stake. We are not a democracy. And I've said this before, so I won't get into it because I know you guys are probably like, yeah, we get it. We're not a democracy. We know. But enough. Anytime I hear that, I automatically tune that person out because I know they're using propaganda. We're not a democracy. We need to reclaim our republic. Not save our democracy, but reclaim the republic. Because that's what we are, a constitutional republic. And we need to turn things around somehow. And I think, yes, David, thank you. Yes, that's what I say. I'm a constitutionalist. The hell with them both, Dems and Repubs. The new party should be the Constitutionalist Party. Absolutely. Absolutely. You're 100% correct. And Nathan is saying they despise us for our attitude of independence and strength we had. The locals seem to. Yeah. Our republic is unique in the world. It absolutely is. It really is. And I think that that's something that we need to be proud of again, right? And I think that people in society who have a liberal uh, sort of sense of self, if they understood a, let's call it a constitutionalist or conservative constitutionalist perspective, and maybe calling it constitutionalist will be better because it's not conservative, right? Um, a constitutionalist perspective actually allows you more individual liberty than Democrats and liberals. That's what the Constitution is all about, civil liberties. It's allowing you to do what you want to do. If you're a grown ass person and you decide, I want to change my body through surgery and become the opposite sex, I don't care. It's not my body, it's your body. Do what you want to do, right? And I know a lot of conservatives will disagree with me on that one. But if you're a grown ass adult and that's the decision you want to make, how is that different than plastic surgery? How is that any different? It's your body. Do what the fuck you want with it. I don't care. You have the right to do that. I can't sit here and say, don't force me to put a vaccine in my body or whatever, and then tell you that you can't do whatever you want with your own body. Like we get so caught up in these little things that don't affect us personally. That affects that person who does that to their body. But guess what? It's their body. They could do it if they want. Right? We can't just say, no, you can't do that because I don't like it. Now, on the other hand, that same person shouldn't get upset if someone else disagrees with their decision because we also have freedom of speech. So other people can shout and talk about it and say, you know what, I think that's really weird and like that's crazy. And you're not a man, you're a woman, or vice versa, whatever. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but they have the right to say it, and you can't get so upset about it. Like, do you remember when we were kids, those of you who are like closer to my age or older, and we got bullied at school, right? Like everybody sort of went through something at some point in time, just about. And what did our parents tell us? Or at least what did my parents tell me? My dad, who retired as a colonel from the Air Force, very, very much military man. His response is, and I know a lot of you are going to have heard this as well. It builds character. And at the time, as a kid, you're like, what the fuck, dude? But he's right. He's right. It does build character. You need to be resilient as a human being. People are not resilient these days. It's absolutely crazy. And yes, I agree with you, Intergalactic Angler. Yeah, leave the kids out of it. You need to be an adult, right, to make that decision. You need to be at least 18. But anyway, yeah, I'm getting off on a tangent. But trying to make an example of like, yeah, well, constitutional is like that. The Constitution is all for civil liberties. People don't understand that. They think that conservative ideals are anti-civil liberties. And in fact, it's more for civil liberty than anything else. We are anti-socialism. That's what we are. And right now, the Democratic Party is just indoctrinating people into believing that socialism is the route we need to go, which is absolute insanity. Absolute insanity. That's similar to what Thomas Jefferson said, Snoopy says, about people have to be careful with choosing their own doctor for medication when someone asked him about controlling medicine way back then. Yeah, you know what? It's up to everybody, right? It's their own decision. It's their own, like, nobody should be telling you what you have to do with your own body. I mean, if you have a right over anything, it should be your own body. Also, they think the Constitution is there to empower the government. I see that a lot, which is interesting, right? Because it's not. It's there to do the opposite. We saw in the Supreme Court case that we watched last week, talking about the First Amendment, and Ketanji, what is her name? Ketanji Brown Jackson, I think it is. She said, oh, well, your interpretation of the First Amendment seems to be hamstringing the government quite a bit. And I was like, that's the point of it. That's the entire point of the First Amendment, is to hamstring the government and allow the people to say what they want to say. the fact that this is a Supreme Court justice, and I know a lot of people had also had that same reaction, and so this has been talked about a lot, and it's not something that you haven't heard, I'm sure, but um, that's where our Democratic Party is at, that even a Supreme Court justice is like, "Oh, well, that's kinda limiting the government a little too much." That's the point of the Constitution, is to limit the government. I don't Do people just, are they not aware of it? Anyway, I don't know. We're getting off track. We were talking about our veterans. But you know, that's what, and you guys who are veterans, I don't mean to speak for you, but I know as someone whose parents are veterans, that's what they fought for, was the Constitution, right? I can't remember if it was my mom or my dad who said, I don't fight for our president, I fight for the Constitution. And that is 100% accurate. And so, to all of you out there who are veterans or who are current military who might be hearing this, thank you. And know that we support you, and I will do everything that I can to continue to fight for you and make sure that you are being taken care of in the way that you have taken care of the rest of us. Um, and I don't know what better way to sort of end things than that. Thank you guys so much. I hope this wasn't just a big Debbie Downer at the end. Did I pull a Schultz at the end? Oh God. Um, but no, I love all of my veterans that are here, and you guys, you make me so happy whenever I find out, especially those of you who I've been talking to for a while, and I find out you were a veteran. That's amazing. Be proud of that. Be proud of your service. And we're proud to have you here with us. So thank you all very much. And I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I hope you have a great Easter. I love Easter because it's the beginning, right? It's springtime. Yay. Maybe the warm weather will be coming back soon. Let's hope. Ugh. I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of the cold weather. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. And I will put that that other hearing that we watched, just that little tidbit from. I'll put the link to that in the description for those of you that didn't see it. It is a really, really good hearing. Please go watch it if that's something that you're interested. And Matthew Lohmeier's book, also really good. I can put a link for that too down in the description. Yes, XJ, maybe that's the better way to end this. 1A allows us to speak out against the government. 2A allows us to fight against tyranny. Yes. Or as I like to say, the First Amendment is the first because it's the most important, and the Second Amendment is there to protect the first. So that's something we're going to get into too. We're going to do, I got a couple of 2A shows that I'm percolating and want to get in the works, because that's something I want to talk about a little more as well. So anyway, yes, thank you. Bless everyone, and happy Easter to you too as well. And I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll be back Monday, and we will get into something else fun. So next week is another week that Congress is off. So maybe we'll do some different types of shows as well. Maybe we'll do some more conversational type shows and just, spout off my opinion, which I enjoy doing as well, and have some conversations with you guys. So that could be fun too. Let me know what you think. Think about it, then let me know in the comments, under the show, what you think we should do next week. And yes, happy Easter to everyone. Happy Easter, you guys. Happy Easter. And I'm working on an updated version of the ending and the beginning, so you can see Eggy Smalls, the patriotic chicken. I realized, I was watching it the other day, I was like, oh my gosh, she was so young when I took that picture of her. So I have an updated version of her. She still has her hairdo, but she looks a little bit different, and I got a really good picture. Eggy is hilarious because she does these crazy looks. She's like, all the time. She's a crazy one, but we love her. And she's doing great. For those of you that know about her being attacked by the hawk a couple of weeks ago, she's doing great, healed up, and back to her normal self. So thank you guys. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you. And I'm glad. I'm glad because it's what I do. It's what I do best is just talk. But anyways, thank you guys so much and have a wonderful weekend. Happy Easter to you all. And I will see you on Monday. Bye.
I grabbed my coat and my heart and soul shoes and walk among the groups of two. It's not ideal, it's just how we feel. It's a shame we're easily amused. The only cure for this forward motion is to make emotion fly away. The air is cold, but the water's not frozen. I see ripples rolling every day. Cast a stone and hit a hardcore view. Catchphrase of the day is that it's true. There's no coffee talk and only one way to please. It's a shame what you do moves me. The only cure for this forward motion is to make emotion fly away. The air is cold, but the water's not frozen. I see ripples rolling every day. Yeah, I'm not looking for a windswept view. Our change has changed. Nothing's new. Write a new song that knows. The only cure for this forward motion is to make emotion fly away. The air is cold, but the water's not frozen. I see ripples rolling every day. If I could know what would do wrong, I'd take this smile. The only cure for this forward motion is this smile. The only cure for this forward motion is this smile. The only cure for this forward motion